Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to OPC. We're into Season 6 already. I'm Kevin AVRL Walker, joined with me this evening, Matt Pixie Carroll. Season 2 action is nearly done.
Week 6, yeah, last weekend of the second round robin of the tournament, and it's going to decide it all. There is still so many teams that could potentially make playoffs, and this is going to be the decider. This is where we're going to find out who exactly it's going to be, and with a weekend of great matches to support it as well.
Yeah.
We've got some of the hottest matchups of the round robin. Kind of like saving the best for last here.
Well, this is where everything kind of comes to an end here. We're going to start things off this evening with AHQ and Ardeont. Following that will be Blank versus Flash Wolves. And finishing the evening is going to be Marchi Esports against Liblent Supreme. But of course, starting off the first match is an important one for AHQ.
I mean, the thing that's interesting about this is, if anyone here's got the history of upsets, as it were, for these top two teams, Flash Wolves and Ardeont, it's AHQ. No one else has actually beaten Flash Wolves yet, aside from Ardeont themselves. So in a way, there's the precedent for AHQ to pull this one out. The only kind of spanner in that works is, of course, the loss they picked up against Mega just last week. Of course, on the other side of that, you got Ardeont, though, still yet to pick up a series loss, only having one map loss. And maybe AHQ are about to change that record, but it's still a tough ask.
And this is going to be the most difficult game so far for AHQ as well. You've already sort of mentioned this, but coming off a loss against Mega last week, that's going to seriously affect their ability to make it into the top 4, into the playoffs. Now, before we head into the match, a couple of words from both sides. We've got Coach Nito representing AHQ and Jeff representing Ardeont. Since we lost to Mega last week,
这一拜基本上我们有3场，就是可以说上是全胜的。那今天因为是第2循环，再次遇上 ART， 那希望今天也可以像我们在第1季就是击败神坛王者的 BLK 一样，然后击败 ART。谢谢。
It feels like if we can have some of our past successes against Ardeont now, we're going to have a really good shot at still making playoffs.
열심히 해가지고 이제 플레이오프 때 더 좋은 모습 보여드리도록 노력하겠습니다. 끝까지 지켜봐 주세요. 감사합니다.
好，他说呢，这周已经是季后赛的最后一周比赛了，那我们会更努力打好每一场比赛的那一周季后赛的好表现。那我们请双方握手一下。那比赛呢，马上就要开始了，我们把画面交给主播台。
Is Nito really tall or is Jeff really short? Can't quite
Why tell. Not both?
Why? Yeah, actually, yeah. It's like there's like a real good kind of point of reference there.
It's like when a Huss gets on stage.
Exactly. Like, is everyone in Taiwan just really short, or is Huss just really tall? It's hard to tell. You got no context. So, I actually do want to say something about the matchup, though, not just the heights of the players, because look, Ardeont actually having that is quite an interesting thought, I think, because it's like without wanting to like sound too heavy-handed on this, like it's not like they desperately need to up their game right now. Look, it's always important if you are ahead of the pack to keep working to stay ahead of the pack, keep that distance about as wide as it can possibly be. So actually, what Ardeont are doing makes absolute sense there, right? But the onus, realistically, is on everyone else to beat Ardeont still. Look, we kind of had this last playoffs for Season 1. We were in this situation where Flash Wolves were largely undefeated, and other teams were starting to actually very much catch up to them. So the question that was being asked was, has this other team caught up enough, or have Flash Wolves stayed ahead of the pack? Have they continued to push that level further forward still, even as the other teams have improved? And ultimately the answer was yes. So you do kind of expect that that will happen with Ardeont naturally. As teams get better and better, start really challenging Ardeont, suddenly, you know, it's a fire underneath you, right? You've got to start working harder to stay ahead of the pack.
You can already see reflected in the standings as well. Teams in 3, 4, and 5 in those positions right now, Blank, Hong Kong Attitude, and AHQ, all in very kind of a difficult place. You could have a situation where any of those two teams can make it into the top 4, and one of them, unfortunately, has to bow out at number 5. Currently, that number 5 team is AHQ, so a lot of questions this weekend, particularly for that team, how they're going to do, and they're going to start things off against Ardeont, but let's go ahead and meet the teams. So,
well, we've got AHQ versus Ardeont. So the thing is,
so Blank Esports is coming up soon.
Yeah, that'll be later. But I do actually want to talk about AHQ because, of course, these guys, generally speaking, have been considered to be the second place Taiwanese team. That is now kind of in contention, right? They have very much surpassed Flash Wolves just in their previous match record. That's not quite reflected in the standings yet, but I gotta go back to this. The spatter in the works has to be the loss they picked up against Mega. These guys can still make top 4, but it's now a bit of a hard ask, right? They've got to beat Hong Kong Attitude and Blank, and they are relying on both of those teams to lose other matches as well. Now look, Blank can no longer lose against Mega. Hong Kong Attitude can no longer lose against Mega. What they're actually relying on is something like Flash Wolves getting upset, or even themselves upsetting Ardeont. And that's the thing, right? This match is actually really important for AHQ because this kind of marks the last time, realistically, for this round robin, that their ability to make playoffs is in their own hands. From here onward, look, aside from these matches against Hong Kong Attitude and Blank, which they do absolutely need to win, even winning those has no guarantee of making top 4 with it. So if they do lose this match, they're relying on winning those other ones and other losses being picked up by those teams, like I said, totally out of their hands.
Yeah, so AHQ now as well, I think their Sunday match against Blank is going to be where it makes or breaks. This is going to be a difficult one as we take a look at the Ardeont roster as well, because you're in a situation now where actually AHQ taking any map wins at all is going to be pretty good. The map score, the map difference does count towards the end if there is a situation where AHQ and Blank end up tied. So picking up some map wins against Ardeont is potentially an advantage they can have against Blank if Blank do not pick up map wins against Ardeont.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I mean, even just in the sort of ephemeral sense of having a good showing against the top team in the tournament, where maybe other teams haven't had very strong showings against them, that's something that is kind of a boon, if you will, coming into other such matchups, I suppose, like the one against Blank. It's sort of this interesting situation for this team, but to sort of touch onto the Ardeont side of that, I mean, you've got to go back to the fact that these guys came into this tournament and have gone almost entirely undefeated, save for one map loss. Now look, they've had some kind of close-ish performances against some teams. Last time we were in this position at the end of the first round robin, when they were having their hardest matchups, they actually did really get pushed a little bit more than they had up till that point. Since then, those teams that did the pushing have improved in their own right. I actually really expect Ardeont to get pushed to their, maybe not their limit, but if they have a limit, we'll maybe start to see it this weekend.
Yeah, that'll be an exciting thing for sure, especially with the fact that AHQ have had some good results and a little bit of a surprising loss as well. So now, how are they going to shape up against a team like Ardeont? Because that's been the question on our mind since AHQ actually beat Flash Wolves a little further back now. So, I mean, this has to be the real test. You've beaten Flash Wolves, they're number 2. How far can you go now against the number 1 team instead?
And you'd hate for it to be such that you were able to beat Flash Wolves, but then you aren't quite able to make it into playoffs. Because, I mean, first of all, you'd sit there going, you know, you'd watch the semi that Flash Wolves are playing in, and win or lose, you would sit there going, we could have beaten them, and we know that we could have beaten them. And you don't want to be in that situation as AHQ. You definitely don't want to be in that situation, given that in Season 1, you made it into playoffs, but you were the first team out of playoffs. And arguably, you were kind of slumping leading up to that point. They had all those losses leading into it against teams like Hong Kong Attitude. I mean, that's, at the time, arguably as radical a result as the result of Mega versus AHQ. So you would hate to actually just kind of have history repeat itself, only it would be even worse, because this time you wouldn't even be able to make it into playoffs.
And then on the other side of the coin as well, looking at Ardeont, this is now a team that has been quite heavily praised, and it would be interesting to see where some weaknesses might pop up now they're facing up against the top tier competition in the OPC in the final week of the regular season as well, because so far, at the end of the first round robin, that's when we saw their first map loss that was against Flash Wolves. Are we going to see something against AHQ along the same veins? That's not even including the fact that Ardeont will then be playing both Blank tomorrow and Flash Wolves on the Sunday as well. So all of these kind of factors will be kind of adding up here. It would certainly say something if Ardeont then go on to playoffs, still yet to receive an actual match loss, but where are they going to drop the maps? Because they did previously still beat Hong Kong Attitude, who are looking pretty good.
I actually agree with that completely, what he's got written there.
All of their comments.
Yeah.
7 of them.
All of them, yeah. I have no idea what it says. Someone, I'm sure
someone...
you didn't? Yeah, I'm sure someone in like Twitch chat or something can read Korean. They can like translate it for us, let us know what it means. I don't know. So, you actually bring up something interesting there that I want to go a little bit more in depth on, and that's of course the situation with Ardeont not quite receiving any match losses just yet. Because here's the thing as well. Look, this weekend's performance aside, it's actually still not out of the woods yet for Ardeont. So if we're talking about needing to stay ahead of the pack, The reality is they've been top of the tables since this season started. That's just been a fact from the get-go, and they've only got that one map loss. And we often talk about the team in first place as having a target on their back. That's the team that everyone is striving to beat first and foremost. All rivalries aside, that's the one you really want to take down, right? It's kind of like big game hunting, right? It's the prize kill, okay? That's the one that's going to be able to, it's going to make you look so cool when you take that back to your village and show everyone the beast you slew, right? It's St. George and the Dragon. That's what that is, and that's what AHQ are looking for. Kind of ironic, given that AHQ have a dragon in their logo, by the way. But in all seriousness,
Hong Kong attitude.
But in all seriousness, yeah, look, maybe Ardeont make it into the finals. In fact, it's very likely they make it into the finals, but they're going to go there with the target on their back the whole way through. And you don't want to actually be Ardeont. You make it all the way into the finals. You had this incredible run, and then you make it into the finals, and finally, the team that has got into that finals against you has caught up, and they hit that target on your back, and you go down. Because then, the most impressive thing about you was that someone else played Giant Slayer to you.
And that's going to be the most disappointing part of the tournament for Ardeont, if that's going to happen at some point in the season. If it was going to happen, you'd hope maybe that happens now in the regular season and not in the actual playoffs themselves.
You actually want it to happen earlier. They could lose to AHQ
if at
tonight.
all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it might not also happen.
Exactly. If it doesn't happen at all, that's great. But if it is going to happen, maybe it would, in a way, you would rather it be against AHQ tonight, because then you can push yourself, come back in the final, and there's a bit of a redemption thing to it all.
The other thing right now is actually, because of the way the playoffs format works, where the first place team plays the fourth place team, and the second place team plays the third place team in a single elimination, by the way, so no second chances there. If you come fourth in the top 4 to go into playoffs, you're going up against Ardeont first, based on what we're seeing in the standings right now. So a lot of teams now fighting for positioning here do also want to avoid number 4 if they can.
And that's the other thing that is a factor for these guys. I mean, AHQ may not have a choice, but certainly Hong Kong Attitude and Blank do, as do Flash Wolves actually. They could still get bumped down to 4th if they have a disastrous weekend. So, of course, first map pick going through is going to be Ilios for AHQ, and they do have the home side here picking up the first control, the assault there in the middle, and hybrid at the very end. That's picks 1, 3, and 5. Ardeont will get picks 2 and 4, the first hybrid, and the escort map rather. And I think Ilios is interesting to say the least. Mega took a map of Ilios off Ardeont just last week. AHQ have had some incredibly impressive performances on Ilios, especially on Ruins, especially on the back of Dizzy specifically. I think this is a very astute pick by them.
I think this is a good pick for AHQ. When you consider, like you've already mentioned, the history that AHQ has on this map so far, the fact that Ardeont have shown a little, or I don't know if weakness is the correct word here, but at least have let something go. So where Mega took advantage of Ardeont is the same place that AHQ can do that, which is if AHQ can get an early lead, can get a little bit of snowball rolling. We've already seen a situation where Ardeont failed to catch up. Now, that might have been a one-time mistake that they made. We may not see that ever again from them. Definitely maybe, potentially not against AHQ either, but it has happened, and for AHQ, they will have taken notice.
And, of course, Ardeont themselves will have actually taken notice. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. Look, they don't want it to happen again, and ideally it never will happen again. But in order for that to be the case, they will have had to have gone and looked at what went wrong and practiced Ilios and ensured that it won't happen again. You would expect that a team like Ardeont will have done that, but here it's going to get put to the test.
I have to see what teams want to run here. When we look back at Ardeont's last performance on Ilios specifically, I'm glad Ursa's already hovered over the Widowmaker, because that was part of the composition that they ran against Mega, and actually part of what didn't really work for Ardeont, interestingly enough. They kind of had this very slow start against Mega that was previously mentioned, and they almost brought it back. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they brought it back to a 99 themselves, but because they were coming in from a deficit, Mega had set themselves up to win Ruins. So the fact that we're also starting on Ruins as well, this is going to really set the pace and set the standard for how the rest of the evening maybe looks for this match as well.
Yeah, just pause there, by the way, so we should be able to have those issues resolved before long. Do sit tight with that. You touch on something interesting there, and the reason it's interesting is actually on the other side of that, going back to what I said about Dizzy. He's currently hovering the Genji. Don't know if that's set in stone just yet, but like with how impressive and incredible his Widowmaker has been, plus the notion that you kind of want to go toe-to-toe with Erster's Widowmaker.
Expecting him to challenge.
I would expect him to go into the Widowmaker and challenge, especially on Ruins. Look, maybe he doesn't pull it out on the other maps of Ilios, that's fair enough, but I would be surprised if he doesn't play it on Ruins. However, if he doesn't, if it is the Genji, then my assumption would actually be they identified something in how Mega took down Ardeont on Ruins that had nothing to do with Widowmaker. And that may well be the case. So it may just be that AHQ have done their homework and really have a strategy going into this, which again goes back to that thing of, it puts Ardeont to the test here. Have they fixed up whatever it was that went wrong, or is it still exploitable? If it's exploitable, is it something that's actually exploitable across their gameplay as a whole?
The other thing that was sort of, we got a sneak peek at is both teams looked like they were going to go for a Sombra.
Yeah.
And that's another expected thing to have on Ruins. Now, Ardeont have run a lot of Sombra and Ruins, and kind of Ilios in general. And so have AHQ, so that's going to be an interesting matchup where whoever gets the first health pack control, that mega pack in the middle, on the side, that's going to really put one team ahead, and really going to put one Sombra play ahead, because it's going to determine who gets the first EMP. The first EMP is going to really snowball the fight, and you can expect whoever gets that is going to be the one winning, outside of really crazy Widowmaker headshot starts, which can also happen, and it can also happen for the team that gets the health pack with the Sombra first, which then also forces the other team Sombra to consider, do I swap off Sombra now that the health pack control is completely gone for me?
And if you are going to swap off that Sombra, like, you want to know that you need to swap right away. You don't want to waste any time. Something interesting about that is, and look, I'll be honest, I don't have an exact numerical stat to back this up, but I'm pretty sure this is the case, actually. Ardeont haven't generally got that first health pack hack. Now, they haven't played Ruins many times, but if I'm not mistaken, actually Mega got it when they played Ardeont last week. And actually I found that quite surprising because, like you said, Ardeont play a lot of Sombra. They have good kind of coverage and good control with it. They have good prioritization. You would expect that they could get the Sombra in there quickly and cover them so that they can hack that health pack safely. But generally speaking, it's actually been the other teams that have been able to do that. In general, actually, when we've seen Sombra mirrors out of Ardeont, they've often actually not been the first to hack health packs. And often as well, they've actually been the ones to change off the Sombra. They've still generally gone on to win those control maps overall, but that's still a factor, and it's a very interesting thing about them, I think. They are good at the Sombra, but there is just something that's maybe not as smooth as a lot of other teams Sombra play.
And this is where teams can take advantage, because if you can get aggressive early, if you can knock Jeff out of the fight early, or at least prevent him from getting the first hack in, that's when you're going to get that early lead that Mega had on Ruins, how they beat Ardeont on Ruins in the first place. So part of the Widowmaker's job here for both sides, if they're going to go that way, is to actually enable their own Sombra to get that health pack control and disable the other Sombra. Really, put a lot of pressure through shots onto the other Sombra and not necessarily go for the Widowmaker duel right off the bat.
And if we look back to how exactly Mega did beat Ardeont on Ruins specifically, because, I mean, we keep referring to it, it's worthwhile, I think, just reminding everyone how it actually played out is Mega got the opening fight win. Then they got the point, and they got a lot of subsequent, that's the word I'm looking for, a lot of subsequent fight wins, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the time they were getting them off the back of a couple of individual picks here and there. They were constantly just putting Ardeont in a situation whereby they couldn't attack onto the point. And there were all these other tools they had, like the EMP that was helping with that. And there was a lot going on. There was just a bit too much for Ardeont to fight through at most times. Point got up to 95% before Ardeont capped it off Mega. The thing is, though, from there, actually it took Mega quite a few fights to get the point back under their control. And the first fight they went into after losing the point, they actually did have a bit of an ult lead. So realistically, it also actually came quite close to them not quite getting it over the line. And when they did actually re-grab, within that space of 5%, Ardeont actually bumped them back off the point, and it wasn't until it was up to 99% that Mega then got the re-grab one last time and was able to hold the point down. Now with AHQ, you expect they'd be able to push out a similar kind of lead. You would expect that they would be able to get the re-grab a little bit quicker if they do lose the point, and you would expect that they're not going to get the point taken back off them again after getting the re-grab. So on the whole, you would assume, on paper, AHQ can pull out that Ruins win just based on Mega's performance, and you would assume that they can do it cleaner and better. Whether that then translates to Well and or Lighthouse is another story, and whether it actually happens in execution is also another story. But on paper, this is actually a really favorable situation for HQ, and I gotta go back. That's why I think this is a really smart map pick out of them.
But that's interesting to bring up Well and Lighthouse as well, because when we do depart Ruins and we move on to the other maps, if Well is going to be the second map in particular, now the third one's going to be interesting, whatever that's going to be, because there is the likelihood that Ardeont take this 2-0. But if it's not the case, if we go into Well, the Pharaoh does become a bit of a pick here, especially for Dizzy, because it's something AHQ have brought up consistently now. So for AHQ, somewhat becoming a little bit predictable in Ilios. Ardeont are as well, but in a kind of different way. Ardeont don't have these kind of pocket picks. They're going for a lot more standard strategies here. You're going to see them play most likely Tracer Genji on Well against Dizzy's Pharmacy. So that's going to be an interesting matchup on Well as well. And then we get to Lighthouse. You're likely to see Dizzy go back onto something, either the Soldier or the McCree. So that's generally AHQ's game plan throughout the Ilios, the 3 stages. And for Ardeont, more standard, but then on Ruins is where they bring out the other sort of picks. So
yeah, and actually to kind of speak to more specifically Well and the potential to see a Pharaoh there, what we've often seen actually is AHQ get in an exact mirror with the Pharah and Mercy pickup, and we've seen AHQ come out the better of that every single time without fail so far on Ilios. And they are just really good at positioning in such a way that it pressures out the enemy team's Pharah and Mercy combo. They are able to take control of those guys, and I'll be honest, it's something that a lot of teams don't really know how to do, right? A lot of the time when they're in the mirror, it's not that they don't know what to do at all, but the strategy generally comes down to, okay, get the enemy Pharah out of the picture somehow. AHQ have a very specific, very effective way of actually doing that on Well. And that's why they're having a lot of success. You would expect them, again, to be able to replicate that success against Ardeont. The only exception is Ardeont will have been able to study that. And Ardeont may also be the first team to kind of learn how to deal with that.
Well, the real exception is that we're not expecting a mirror here, because Ardeont are not really going to be playing a Pharmacy at all. They're going to be playing Tracer Genji on Well. So that's where the real struggle is, because how does their Tracer Genji match up to the Pharmacy? Are they going to be able to win that ground battle? How are they going to deal with Dizzy, if at all? And mind you, we're still on patch 1.14, so it's not the new Mercy just yet. You're not going to see these sort of tempo reses. So in terms of what Ardeont's game plan is, are they going to have a good game plan to deal with Dizzy and the Pharmacy? Or is that not even a concern whatsoever, and they're just going to win everywhere else and just totally ignore Dizzy?
Yeah, it's the thing you do wonder. It's one thing to be able to establish that aerial control and to be extremely good at it, but you're completely right. If you've only got aerial control, that's actually not enough, right? You do need to have both. It's only a complement to your ground control that makes it even easier to hold a point once you have control of it. Means that there is a lot more that the enemy team has to be dealing with, but you're right. Like it's no substitute for actually just controlling the space at all. It's an interesting situation, to be sure. Pause, of course, still ongoing there, so do just hold tight. By the way, after we had our last epic pause last Sunday, I actually went home and I looked up the roller coaster that I got stuck on. And like, I don't know if you know this, but on YouTube, there are entire channels dedicated to riding on roller coasters and filming it from the front seat so that people can like see what the roller coaster is like, so you don't ever have to go on a roller coaster, which I think is great. It also turns out it was called Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So actually there's a big in there too. It's a bit bigger than the regular one. But we're on Ilios, we made it! And we do actually have Dizzy onto the Widowmaker as well.
All right, so this is going to be the regular Thunder now. Unfortunately, not going to see that Widowmaker 1v1. But there's going to be the Sombra matchup that's going to be mirrored, so that's interesting.
A lot of shots landed onto Republic, a lot of headshots, which totally pressured him out, so great follow-up to actually get Erster out of the picture. And Erster, by the way, actually swapped off the Widowmaker, so now if they can get Jeff out of here, which indeed they can, they've got the health pack control, they've got the point control as well, and they've got Dizzy set up with nice sightlines. This is exactly what we expected out of AHQ here.
This is an interesting gamble from Ardeont, and now Erster is going to go on the Widowmaker instead. He's going to try and match Dizzy, but the health pack control and the camp control have now gone to AHQ. The win condition starts to become really clear with the Infrasight as well, which by the way has come up really quick when you consider that only 16% of the cap is gone. This puts Erster in a really bad spot.
Exactly, it makes it almost impossible for him to get good sightlines on Dizzy, because Dizzy already has the sightlines. No one can hide from his sight, right? And look, a lot of the pressure on these tanks here is what's pushing it through. Now they pick down Republic rather, and they're just keeping control of this fight. Losing Keras, little unfortunate, but they've got so much control over the ground anyway, they're going to be totally fine. Keras is going to be able to rejoin this one. He'll be able to get the EMP in time for the next fight as well. AHQ are looking really in control here.
And AHQ are doing a great job on the front lines as well. It's not just Dizzy in the back, but you have to consider what the rest of the team, the other 5 members, are doing for Dizzy. They're giving him the sightlines, they're giving him the space control. Because they're holding Ardeont so far back, no one's able to effectively challenge Ardeont. Ursa still really can't make up his mind about exactly what he wants to play here. Looking for a flank now directly onto Dizzy.
Good catch onto Crappy, opens this one up very nicely for Ardeont. They're getting really good pressure down. AHQ may want to commit ultimates, but without Hiki and with Eric low, it's a little bit dicey. Ursa is getting pressured out, but they're able to get the pick in first anyway. Dizzy does respond with one. They're going to be able to push a bit more percentage out of this, but now Cap going over to Ardeont. However, this is that situation where we do expect AHQ to be able to get that regrab in a timely fashion.
So that was actually a really nice kind of micro adaptation that Ardeont had there. You kind of wonder what Ursa was doing. He tried to challenge Dizzy in the 1v1. Looked like he was kind of losing in the 1v1. Eric came and helped Dizzy as well, but while that was happening, Ardeont was picking up kills everywhere else. So actually, the weakness was the fact that Dizzy was pressuring them down. When you suddenly challenge Dizzy, that entire cap control opens and Ardeont take it.
Good pressure now out of Ardeont. Very tank forward setup here. Dizzy also a little bit far forward. Is going to be able to pull back, but this is not a comfortable position for him to be in against Ursa here. Deflector's now a non-factor, but he's on the verge of going down. There's the Swift Strike to do it. They're trading back though, AHQ, because actually Ursa spent a lot of time on the flank there. Rapid now has the ability to get aggressive, good follow-up. They need to finish off Ursa though, and there they are to do so. There you go, Rapid even gets the credit despite Eric doing the work. Now DM is really the last one really contesting the point. They're going to pop in a sound barrier. Yeah, they're really going for it, but if this doesn't pay off, this is going to set them very far behind, because actually no one on AHQ is dead. Sound barrier is now a non-factor, and AHQ can start committing their own ultimates. There's their sound barrier to match Jeff's Transcendence, and all they need now is to convert kills themselves. Good pressure on Republic. They've forced them a little bit away from the fight, looking to get the closeout on him as soon as possible. There he goes down now, and that's again going to be AHQ. Should be able to get in control of this fight, should be able to get the regrab.
Ursa going down there with Dragon Blade loses a good 30 or so percent of that. So for Ardeont, they're trying really hard to equalize this cap control here, and they've just now managed to actually get this control meter up to where AHQ's is before handing it back to AHQ. And at the end of the day, despite Ardeont using a lot of ultimates, AHQ had to really commit into that one as well. It wasn't cheap for either team, but now it is AHQ finally back in control. With the carrier's EMP, this is where Ardeont can close this game out.
Yeah, what it's done exactly is made Ardeont able to get a grab and win the fight out and out, but it's high risk, high reward, because if they don't get the grab now, AHQ get it. Instant conversion onto DM off the EMP is what they are after. Hehe, good placement on the self-destruct to create pressure and then pick Jeff on the back line. Ardeont need to find some answers now. Rapid looking for a good pulse bomb, ideally to take out the Diva, lands it down. That's going to be Michelle, the mech, and dead, and this is AHQ in control of the final fight. Animo dropping down, and that's going to be the hold. 1-0 up now, AHQ. Got to be feeling good about that.
And that was a lot more commanding than when Mega took the ruins of Ardeont as well. So this is a great start so far for AHQ. If they can continue this momentum, continue this pressure, this is where you're going to start really seeing AHQ take full maps off of Ardeont, not just individual stages. Now for Ardeont though, a couple mistakes on their side that you have to really notice. Right at the start there, Ursa super indecisive. Is he going to go on the Widow? Is he going to go on the Genji? It's kind of 50-50 and just didn't really decide until partway through. That really hurt their team, and you can see still for the Ardeont side, their ability to hold on to that cap and really challenge the cap. Unfortunately though, just didn't have enough gas in the tank to finish it.
And we did say, on paper, AHQ should have been able to execute exactly what just happened on your screen. So of course they could. The question now is, does that translate to other maps? Luckily for them, next map is going to be well, and they are indeed going to be running the pharmacy.
Now, this is going to be somewhat easier to deal with for Ardeont, and that sounds kind of weird because Tracer Genji doesn't usually have good options, but they also have really good coordination on this team. So if they can get a decent lead here, if they can really take ground control, force Dizzy back, that's when they're going to see some success and really take down the ground members of AHQ. That should be Ardeont's goal here.
And they're moving smartly to do that, getting control all around the flanks of the point without actually leaving themselves exposed to Dizzy. However, they still need to actually convert that into kills and ideally some kind of pressure on the point. AHQ going to try and stop that from happening though, but it's the first few kills going the way of Ardeont. Now, no real response just yet from AHQ, and now they're able to pressure Crappy and Dizzy way away from the fight. That aerial control doesn't really mean anything, and this is exactly what we were saying. Ardeont just getting the ground control instead more than makes up for the lack of Pharah.
And you'd expect Dizzy to really be able to get a lot of work done here. You'd expect for AHQ, with Dizzy uncontested in the skies, with Crappy uncontested as well, that that's an opening for them, but not exactly, because Ardeont, they know where the picks are on the ground floor, and now they're still managing to keep this roughly even, and that works out in Ardeont's favor because they're capping up the point.
And AHQ really piled into that fight as well, long after the cap had gone through to Ardeont. They felt that they got just enough picks that they could maybe close out some more and get the cap back over, but they never have, and now actually Ardeont are really far ahead.
You're still waiting to see this pressure now from Dizzy. When we were on Ruins on the Widowmaker, he had a lot of damage output, he was getting a lot of kills. This time around on the Pharah, you're not really seeing that. Where is the damage coming from? Because it's certainly not from the DPS, it's from AHQ this time.
Already you see DM just going full-on hunter-killer on the stack line. Good pressure on Jeff, and a nice, rocket barrage, but deflected back at him. That's going to be no more Dizzy for you, and also losing Crappy means no res, even though they don't even have it up. So AHQ now just kind of slipping even further behind, unfortunately, committing ultimates and not getting anything done.
Once again, on paper, this composition from Ardeont should not be working against what AHQ is running. But when you consider the coordination out of Ardeont, when you consider their target selection in particular, and then the fact you have the best Genji in the OPC playing on your team, Ursa's able to take down both Dizzy and Crappy with one Dragon Blade, a deflect on the Rocket Barrage straight back at Dizzy's face as well. He's a one-man killing machine, and he's getting it done.
And that's the thing, positionally, you expected Ardeont can deal with this composition. They know that AHQ run this, they have done their homework. Now AHQ, kind of going into what could well be their last fight, very lean on resources, and if they lose Crappy here, which they are just about to if they're not careful, then it's off to a bad start. Just barely keeping him alive, just barely getting saved by the sound barrier in particular, and now they're finally getting something done here, AHQ, but it is still struggling, right? They just aren't getting these extra kills now, even as Rapid is doing work. They need to keep Crappy alive.
No res.
He needs to get the res. He's so close, but he's just not there yet. And actually, Dizzy wasn't taking enough damage for Crappy to get the res in time. And with that, they're not going to be able to get that last-ditch rescue. Entire game, 100-0, not one res was available from Crappy.
And that's a very commanding map for Ardeont. I mean, it looked like a good lead for AHQ onto Ruins, but as soon as you get onto Well, and this had to be the talking point, because we kind of mentioned Ruins is more, I guess, predictable in terms of what we can expect maybe in terms of outcome as well, and that outcome was kind of what was predicted there. But when you get onto Well, it's a bit of a toss-up, because on both sides you can see how teams are going to win this, and on the AHQ side it was going to be off the back of Pharmacy, which they've used to beat other teams now, but this time they're not getting that Pharmacy mirror. They're going up against Tracer Genji, which again on paper they should be beating, but in reality it's not happening.
And what that kind of suggests is AHQ looked at Ruins in the Mega Ardeont series when, okay, this is what we would need to do to win on that same map, and just kind of assumed that the things that had been successful for them on Well would also still work against Ardeont. That clearly hasn't been the case, and now you've got to question how well Lighthouse is going to go. They're running the same thing again, looking to get much more pressure out now, and this time the aerial control is just looking a little bit tidier. Still need to convert those kills though.
The area control here is really good, because you can see the AHQ tanks getting really forward positioning. This is going to put Dizzy in a really great spot as well, so he's going to be the one now getting the angles he's been looking for onto Well. Still though, it's not AHQ taking the first kills.
Yeah, it is Eric going down first, but the pressure is there, and they do actually have the ground control such that they can get themselves onto the point. Ideally, they wanted Eric alive for when they move for the point, but they are still able to get onto it, and they're pressuring out any members of Ardeont that are going to move in to try and contest it. This is going to be a point cap for AHQ, and Dizzy getting those picks on the back end, that was Ardeont moving towards the point when they knew that they'd already lost it. That was an unnecessary pair of deaths for them.
And finally, you're seeing Dizzy getting these picks now. That's his third one of the game so far, and it's been pretty impactful. I mean, AHQ getting the first cap now. We're starting to see some signs of what we saw in Ruins, how AHQ got that early lead, how they maintain that lead. If they can really tap into this power again, Ardeont's not going to have this comeback that they sort of had against Mega. They're not going to get the comeback that really puts them back into contention.
Also, compare and contrast, 20% up, Crappy's got a res. You compare that to last game, and already they're ahead in this fight as well, with only the pulse bomb being committed. This time, the aerial control, and indeed ground control as a whole out of AHQ is just far superior to what they were able to pull off last game.
Yeah, they're getting late picks here as well. They're really keeping Ardeont locked up in the spawn. Ardeont just can't even get out of this area. Still, the late pick on the Animo, this just keeps on going. You want to be in a position now for Ardeont where you can move forward, because you finally do have ultimates. You got the sound barrier coming up. Transcendence not that far off either. We've seen what Ursa can do with the Dragon Blade. He can get a kill onto both Dizzy and Crappy, but this now gets very difficult because AHQ, for the first time in the series, have this great lead, even bigger than what we saw in Ruins.
And the reality is, even if Dizzy goes down, Crappy's got the res, so Erster's got to find both. But they did start by getting Dizzy as he was channeling the ultimate. That's a big catch on Eric too. You got to commit that res now. There it goes as they lose Rapid. So actually now AHQ numerically still behind in this fight, and Ardeont, without having to use too many ultimates, are getting a lot done. Losing Erster late in the fight though, but they do get the grab. Similar kind of percentage as to what AHQ had last time when they lost the cap. They do end up getting wiped from that fight as well. They've got plenty of time to grab this one back.
That's the thing for AHQ is they didn't have that early frontline control that they've had in every other fight win so far, and that's reflected in the fact that despite losing members, despite getting a res from Crappy, they didn't get the counter trades. Now, if they were resing into a player advantage, that's how they were going to win. That's how they were to get the ultimates out of Erster, Animo, and Jeff, but they didn't get any of that. And now Ardeont, they're in the controlling position.
It's going to be a nail biter to the end, to be sure. Also, Animo and Jeff still with those ultimates up compared to AHQ, who at best can only have one. This is huge for them. Oh, good catch on Erster. They do lose Crappy, but they've got enough kills in the fight that it's going to be worthwhile anyway. Eric going off, man, delivering when it counts. That is a really good timed regrab from AHQ. They now have no resources left. Ardeont still have resources, but they actually opted to not use them.
Rapid just made the difference here. This could have changed the entire game. This might just be the game-winning play against Ardeont, who Erster now deciding that Genji's not going to get the work done. This is when you know Ardeont on the back foot, when Erster's forced to swap against Dizzy. That's how AHQ won Ruins, and that's how they may just win now on Lighthouse.
And to be honest, if they get an early pick, they could just win it outright. However, Erster getting the early picks, he's the one doing the damage where it counts. And honestly, AHQ are going to have to change something up here, not necessarily compositionally, but positionally to deal with this Soldier and Tracer.
You do have to go back to how AHQ were winning those earlier fights, which is based off good area control. They can't get that now. There's no spawn that you can camp from Ardeont because they're in control of the camp itself. So for AHQ, pushing into a defensive positioning that Ardeont have set up, still against both Animo and Jeff's double defensive ultimates, and now Erster working his way up into the tactical visor zone. This is not going to be an easy fight, and it may just be the last one.
That's the commit out of Dizzy, nothing for it just yet, but it does get pressure, has forced out some ultimates. AHQ, they've only got a few ultimates to commit on their own, but the Transcendence could be the big one. They've got that out of Jeff. If they can convert kills now, they may be off to a good start, but they lose carries. They're going to be relying on raising into a numerical advantage, but if they lose Crappy, it'll be no such luck. They do also need to convert that point at some point as well, on top of securing out these kills, struggling to close out on Erster. They're just not quite getting it over the line. Even Eric with the Primal Rage not getting the same mileage. They lose him, and now he's mech, and the tactical visor starts to clean up house. Where's Crappy's res? It has to come in now or never. He only gets two. Can't get Eric and Hehe back into it, and Eric's only just respawned. Rapid already losing his life, and Ardeont have pushed it up to 99%. They've got this ground control, and AHQ just couldn't get it back off them now, despite getting so close, despite nearly having the full 99 to 99. It is still going to be Ardeont picking up the first win.
And that is a heartbreak for AHQ, who came so close, much closer than even Mega did. Look, Mega had a great run, especially onto Ruins, but this AHQ run of Ruins was much better. When you look at how Lighthouse panned out, you could really see AHQ winning this. You could see the sort of the method that they were going to use. You could see the win conditions, which were quite clear for the team, but unfortunately not able to pull the trigger fast enough. Res didn't get out enough value, and once again, the second res that you've seen resed into just not even this. It was worse than the first res because you didn't even res into player equal numbers here. You've resed into a player disadvantage, which you were already in, and you're not resing into your own player advantage and actually putting Ardeont on the back foot. So it's just unfortunate that they weren't able to find the good picks.
And the reality is, all of his reses in that were actually kind of lackluster, as harsh as that is to say. I mean, you already touched on the first one. The last one is the one that really bothers me, though, because, I mean, you didn't even get all the people you could possibly res, and there were opportunities before that to pull out a tempo res as well. You do actually have to question Crappy's decision-making on the timings of some of these and the positions of some of these as well, because those were maybe members. I mean, it's not that simple, right? But there are maybe members he could have been healing up a bit more effectively, going for reses at more opportune times. At any rate, Ardeont are going to pick up Ilios, going to pull up the series 1-0 to start with, and that was AHQ's map pick. So Ardeont already off to the kind of start we expect, but AHQ really did have that one in their sights. This is not going to be an easy win for Ardeont on the series whole.
It wasn't, to be fair, it wasn't Crappy, actually. When I say bad reses, I'm referring to the team in general and not specifically to Crappy's plays here. There wasn't the way that the team actually dies affects how you can res them there, because you're not going to get all 4 if all 4 are not grouped up. So if there were 2 grouped up, he got the 2 that were grouped up and the other 2 a little bit too further away. He actually chose not to res carries when he solo died. That's probably the correct thing to do there. He wasn't going to come alive with the sound barrier or anything like that. So resing 1 Lucio, probably not the value you're looking for. At the same time, the big issue is not in the res itself, it's in where the rest of the team are getting the kills or lack thereof in this case, which is they're not getting the trades while the res is happening. Again, you need to be resing into a player advantage. That's got nothing to do with the Mercy and everything to do with everyone else being able to get the trades in the first place to allow yourself to get the player advantage post-res.
And that's the thing, on the whole, you've just got to feel that AHQ are just not maximizing the Mercy, really. For something that they pick so often, for something that marries in so nicely to the Pharaoh that they are using to great effect, they're actually not getting the most mileage out of the Mercy. And when you are sacrificing generally a Transcendence, you tend to keep the Lucio still, but that's one major defensive ultimate that is not a factor. When you're sacrificing that in favor of getting that kind of aerial control, the kind of safety for that healer, given that they can be in the air themselves, plus that potential huge tempo swing out of a well-timed, well-placed res, if you aren't actually getting all of those things, you might as well run a Zenyatta.
I think the other issue is, more importantly, even more so than the Mercy, is actually the Pharaoh pick, because the Mercy is there kind of because of the Pharaoh. You wouldn't see that Mercy pick. You'd hope anyway from AHQ. And I got to hold my tongue on that one because we have seen AHQ just kind of pull out the Mercy anyway. But in that particular scenario was because they wanted to run the Pharaoh. But Dizzy had a couple good moments overall on Lighthouse. No good moments on Wall, unfortunately. A couple of good moments on Lighthouse when they had that forward control. That was off the back of the fact that tanks were forward, tanks were controlling space. That gave Dizzy a lot of open shots. He got a nice string of 3 kills in a row, including a mech kill. So that was when Dizzy was actually able to get some impact. But other than that, you weren't seeing the pressure and the output that he was having with the Widowmaker Ruins, which was a big proponent of actually how they won Ruins.
I do want to touch on something on Well as well, because I did mention this beforehand. They've had great success on Well with that pharmacy, and they've had great success of establishing aerial control against the other team running a mirror comp. That means running a Pharaoh of their own. And the reason that's able to be successful, if you can reliably take those 2 out of the fight, even not by killing them, but just by pressuring them out, then on the point itself, you have got 6 men, and they at best have 4 to try and take the ground out from underneath the Pharaoh. It's kind of a hard ask, right? Ardeont didn't play into that at all. They just went, let's take 6 versus 4 on the ground, ignore the air for a moment, and it was exactly what you were talking about. Taking that ground control means the aerial control doesn't actually count for much, and that's exactly what happened. So actually, Ardeont, by not playing into that comp in terms of trying to directly match it, actually gave themselves a better position, because they read that AHQ looked really good on this pharmacy, but it was because they were playing it against other pharmacies. They'd perfected, if you will, that particular strategy of knocking out the other team's Pharaoh and Mercy. When that's not a factor, AHQ did just look a little bit more headless. Lighthouse was very different, and it just goes to show how arguably over-specialized AHQ have maybe become on some of those maps. But, moving forward, new map, new time of day, new country, same teams though.
Yep, and it's got to be Kings Row, Ardeont's pick from the away side, and we're going to need to see some adaptations from AHQ if they want to have a better run now, because arguably, Ilios was going to be their best shot, and everything outside of that does look a bit shaky. And certainly, you know, in terms of AHQ, again, the pressure, the responsibility, and the onus is actually on them in the case that they know what they're playing into. If you're running a pharmacy into a pure ground composition with Tracer Genji, you know you have the advantage here. You need to be the ones taking advantage. You need to be the ones really putting the pressure on in terms of the fact that you have an uncounterable air duo on paper again, until actually, you know, the other Ardeont members can afford to really focus you. So that just wasn't taken advantage of from the AHQ side. If they're going into Kings Row now, you're not really going to see any more of that, but what you will see is AHQ going back on a bit more of a tried and true, potentially seeing either Dizzy on McCree or Soldier here, and you could maybe even seeing a bit of Junkrat play from both sides.
You would certainly think so. But I mean, AHQ are really in this heavily back-footed position. They still came into this with Ardeont being the favorites. It's, you know, AHQ was something to prove here. And You know, there was this really logical chain of questions. It's, you know, can they do it on Ruins? Okay, yes, they can. If they can do it on Ruins, can they translate that to the rest of Ilios? And if the answer had been yes, then it would have been, can they now translate that onto the other game modes? But unfortunately for them, they couldn't even translate that Ruins win into Ilios as a whole, close as that came down to. So now their ability to do this is really thrown into contention, right? The assumed answer to can they do it on King's Row would be no. That means it is all on them to prove us wrong now. The onus is on AHQ, and it's coming on a map where they lost against Mega just last week. This was the fifth game that ended up being the decider, and Mega won it against them. Ardeont play King's Row almost every single time they go to hybrid. Every single time it's been them, they've picked it. Most often other teams are picking it against them as well, and they have a very consistent win record. It kind of speaks for itself.
Absolutely, and that's going to make it even more difficult for this AHQ side now, who have to kind of run a different composition. We're going to see AHQ tonight over the course of 2 maps running up to now 3 different compositions. It's going to be the Tracer Soldier, so this is what we normally see out of AHQ. You would expect out of this composition. This is what they're technically, and again on paper, best at, so this has to be what works.
And Ardeont have actually opted to attack first, one of the few teams that does do that at times, so this is kind of a show of confidence, if nothing else, and you can kind of see that reflected. Good force back on Erster, though. Doesn't quite go down. They're trying to get the follow-up, but he's just consistently getting popped off. And now actually AHQ kind of losing that window to get aggressive. They need to be careful to not lose any members here, and Ardeont still have point control. Ooh, they sniff out He's Mac, plus catching Dizzy with a headshot. There's no way AHQ can contest this now. This is Ardeont's point.
And you can tell when Ardeont's really ahead because AHQ's just completely backed off. When Dizzy gives up his high ground positioning, that's when you know AHQ is on the back foot. This entire composition relies on having good area control for AHQ. They need to keep Dizzy alive, they need to keep Dizzy safe, and unfortunately the entire team just has to seed cap A almost immediately.
Also, it kind of came a little bit late. I mean, they didn't have like any super late kills, but Ardeont is still able to get a lot of forward ground control here that AHQ are going to have to kind of fight through in order to start contesting the card in earnest.
And AHQ didn't go for a last-minute contest on A as well, so they didn't give over additional kills to the Ardeont side. That means they now have a better chance to hold this bookstore area. They now have a better chance to hold forward and get their own ultimates up. So Carriers is nearly there. You have a situation where Dizzy can get the tactical visor as well. He might just be in contention for this, but you know, Carriers is no longer there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful stick, and it kind of breaks this high ground that AHQ do have. Now you can see the aggression coming through from the rest of Ardeont, and already it's looking like cleanup before the fight even really started. Like by the time Ardeont were committing, all of AHQ was just so low.
And that's the thing, right? You said it right there. Before the fight even started, the timing there from Ardeont was so critical. AHQ were just only coming online with the ultimates. Carries died on 98%. Dizzy died as he got the tactical visor. Ardeont couldn't have timed that push even better. It was on the split second, and AHQ were not in position to actually use their ultimates, despite just being there.
This is a really rough spot for HQ. They do get this one final contest, but Ardeont have all the resources for it. Already converting onto Crappy, which was one of the few things they did have available, that nano boost. But get Dizzy as well, despite the transcendence out of Carriers, and now, again, is just cleanup. At least the fight had broken out in earnest before that, but honestly, the net effect is the same. It's close to being a full gong, and it certainly is a full team wipe. Ardeont are just unstopped so far.
And off a really cheap fight as well. Only Dragon Blade and Sound Barrier used. The real critical thing is the fact that Erst got 2 kills inside of Transcendence. That shouldn't even be happening. Carries, that should have been a full protection for your team, and you'd expect Transcendence to be keeping everyone alive, but just wasn't the case.
DM does go wide on that. Pulse Bomb gets picked out as well, but they pick Crappy. Did get the nano boost off, but they need to get some mileage for it. Dizzy getting a little pressured out and hasn't got a wealth of targets right now. Just barely staying alive, probably going to go down. There it goes, actually, Michelle getting that kill. And now Michelle is just able to continue putting down more pressure. Nothing from here, he self-destruct. Eric knows better than to commit the Primal Rage here. He just needs to try and retreat if possible, and maybe just take the death if that's how it's going to fall. But now Ardeont on the cusp of capping.
The responses from Ardeont have been perfect as well. AHQ, they wanted to use the tactical visor. Immediately Michelle was in his face. You said lack of targets here. He actually had a lack of targets plus a wealth of Matrix, unfortunately, on the other side.
Yeah, Erster getting carries while he was technically behind The healing field is a little bit rough, but I mean, that's the Dragon Blade for you against a squishy Zenyatta. Already at a numerical disadvantage for what is only really a last-ditch contest anyway. It's all about stalling for time, and AHQ not even getting anything out of that Primal Rage that they had been unable to commit for so long. It's still Ardeont cleaning up all the kills, and in 4:07, not too shabby, Ardeont get the cap.
You got to call Ardeont here Tempo Kings because at every stage of this attack, they 100% dictated the pacing of every single fight as well. And that has to be the second one, which is the most impressive, because you got to go back to that and consider, look, they managed to kill the AHQ side just as their ultimates came up. Had that been maybe even 2 seconds later, a window of 2 seconds or less, that would have been AHQ really contesting with their ultimates. They would have used the Transcendence, Tactical Visor would have come out, Nano Boost probably on to Dizzy as well, if not onto Eric. That would have been a big fight, super costly for both teams, maybe even a fight lost for Ardeont because, you know, AHQ's positioning was fairly good, especially where Dizzy was held up, but because they managed to get the kills just at the correct timing, that was just a total blowout.
Total blowout, unfortunately for AHQ, and I mean, we've got to go back to it, right? The onus was already on them to step it up on this map. Ardeont opted to attack first as kind of a show of confidence, all right? Normally teams opt to defend first because if you can first hold, basically you set yourself up for an easy win. In fact, your ability to win ends up being more reliant on your own ability to defend, and you get that out of the way. You set the precedent for what you have to beat. Ardeont, going for attack first, says that they felt confident enough that they would fully cap, and that they felt they could set such a good time, AHQ would not be able to beat it at all. That is the confidence coming out of Ardeont here. And you've got to say that kind of rings true right now. The onus is on AHQ to somehow match that time, which is an incredibly fast one.
And out of preference as well, Ardeont have been one of the few teams in OPC that do like to attack first, and it does work for them. They're a very good attacking team. They've shown exactly why. I would even go as far as say they're a better attacking team than even a defending team. We're going to see the proof in the pudding now of how Ardeont are going to defend this one. It is going to be a Zaya and a Reinhardt on both sides.
Yeah, running a shield comp here is interesting because actually AHQ with Rapid on the Reaper here kind of have the tools to bust it open, and that's exactly what's happening is they get pressure on the point. Need to convert the kills though. That's what's going to make it count. They lose Dizzy in the mix. Very unfortunate, but getting some trade backs now. They need to keep these tanks alive. They have at least got the 2 healers to do it, and they need to get mileage out of Rapid especially. Dizzy does get the closer respawn, and now they're starting to get pressure onto these 2 shield wielders of the side of Ardeont, looking to get as aggressive as possible. There's the catch onto Republic. Now they can start routing the rest of Ardeont. It may not happen exactly as quickly as what Ardeont did to them, but AHQ very much in control of this fight.
And Ardeont are completely out of position here. Their entire team is just trying to back out, but they're not backing out towards their own spawn. They're backing out towards AHQ spawn. That's just going to make them being sort of caught up in a bit of a pincer play now. But the ultimates finally do come out on both sides.
Ardeont really committing hard to this and actually need to make something work from it. Otherwise, this is all for naught. Throwing the self-destruct into that is a good way to go. They convert these kills. There's absolutely nothing to keep AHQ alive through this now. And they committed ultimate of their own. Ardeont getting that last-minute hold with those few ultimates they committed is huge for them.
And that's just all off the back of the fact that Michelle managed to get a Graviton Surge much quicker than Dizzy. You have to question the damage out here from Dizzy. Still on 55% as Azaya, when Michelle's on 29%, and with the Graviton Surge already used. AHQ were very far ahead. Look, Erica, or rather he managed to get a hook onto DM, killing him quite quickly. Rapid killing Republic as well.
Good heavens.
And they're still just going downhill.
Oh, man. That was so well timed as well, and to get it past the shields out of AHQ, that is the second gong in a row for Ardeont. It is now literally impossible for AHQ to match Ardeont's time if it went to time bank. Best they can do is at least fully cap out with some time left.
You would expect AHQ to cap this one out, at least the A that I'm talking about here, because there's 1/3 left to go. They have a couple more ultimates back online. Now Eric is about to hit that second Earth Shatter. Dizzy's still waiting for the first Graviton Surge.
Oh, the sleep on Rapid, and he's looking for a Death Blossom. They sniffed it out, plus they're the ones losing
He can't
members.
use it now.
Yeah, it's got to be a rescue Death Blossom, and it's probably not safe enough anyway. In fact, he's just far too deep with no support. They can't reach you that far back, not without the tanks in the middle to protect them, and that was nearly a gong. The only reason it wasn't was He and Carriers died so quickly.
If AHQ don't get it off this next push, they're not really going to get it at all. Ardeont may still even just pull the trigger first. If they do, the second grab out of Michelle could be the game ender right now. There's no Matrix on the other side. There's no He on the Diva to block this one out. Where Michelle wants to use it is where the game may just finish.
And there it goes, huge Bionade onto them and the Pulse Bomb as well to secure. And already they're in the command of this fight. They probably won't kill Dizzy, which means they won't get that full gong. But honestly, it just doesn't matter. Ardeont are absolutely running circles around AHQ right now.
You're less concerned about Dizzy getting killed here and more concerned about Dizzy getting some kills. And that's the issue because Michelle now, 2 Graviton Surge. Where's the first one from Dizzy? Still yet to see it. Time and time again, Ardeont are getting far more value and far more impact out of each ultimate. And AHQ just not getting the same.
Well, there's that first ultimate and exactly just not getting the same. Despite the Death Blossom, they still lose one in the mix. Have drawn some ultimates out. There's Eric's Earth Shadow. They need to convert.
Man.
Huge sleep. The Deadeye catches He, but that is all. It should be AHQ able to take this fight now. They've got the closer respawns and they only need to get a third. They've got most of the picks as well. Most of these members of Ardeont who are alive have only just respawned. Erst is kind of on the wrong side of this fight. Still manages to go 1-for-1 with the Pulse Bomb, but at long last, AHQ have got the cap, have got the payload underway. But man, even DM taking down Keras before he goes down.
Yeah, that's a really good pick for DM. Just in the final moments here, you're expecting a lot of speed. Good hook actually. That might slow things down.
That actually really does. And now they can safely commit this whole hog, knowing that Ardeont are at a big numerical disadvantage. They just kind of use that to claim the space. They're looking to get free cart movement.
Probably didn't need to use the whole hog at the end of the day though. Felt a little bit greedy as AHQ, or rather Ardeont, were already backing out there. He just kind of throwing that ultimate out there, kind of giving it away for free to Ardeont. We're going to respond now with an Erster May, which is interesting in the fact that it does split up the AHQ tanks really hard here, so you can get a lot of good pickoffs if you can get a good wall.
That's not the greatest Earth Shatter, unfortunately for Republic. Very lean on resources now, Ardeont. AHQ don't exactly have many of their own, but they've still got this kind of tank buster comp they're running. And if they can get Rapid into a good position, this will go well. DM, though, not quite able to get the angle. AHQ backed off successfully, now can get aggressive themselves with the Earth Shatter in pocket, but they need to respect the grab. Both come out at the same time, and it means neither team can convert off either, but it's AHQ who are able to get out of the grab just quick enough to convert a few kills, and that's massive. Going even in terms of those ultimates, but winning the fight is big news for AHQ.
And they need to continue this momentum as well. This is going to be the only way they actually get a full cap out here, if at all. 1 minute 17 left to go. Really putting the pressure on the front lines. That's important. You don't want Ardeont getting a last minute hold here. Public going down early, that's going to really put Ardeont down.
It really does, because he's kind of the prime nano boost target if he can get into the thick of it. Now you want to maybe put it on Michelle, but Ardeont know it's just not a smart call. It's too easy to backfire, so they do just back off.
We're still seeing a case where Dizzy with the Graviton Surge might be able to get some work done. So for AHQ, the goal here should be to push the cart towards that horseshoe, around that final corner, then one grab to set up a kill, and then after that grab finishes, assuming you get the team wipe, that's when you're really risking the full
kill. Nice placement on the Blizzard there. How many of these members can get out of it? Because it's not looking like many. Eric getting picked. Nice bubble to save Keras, and actually now Erster's in a little deep, but they can't actually convert the kill or any others on Ardeont. So Ardeont, off that ultimate, do get the stop up AHQ for now.
Yeah, and all things considered, there was a pretty decent counterplay from AHQ in terms of how they mitigated the effects of the Blizzard there. Only 2 members dying, only 2 members actually getting caught, the rest of AHQ getting away with their lives. Nice bubble placement, as you sort of said, from Dizzy, saving carries there. So really just coming out the back of that Blizzard, kind of okay.
Jeff nearly just 1v1 Rapid. That's going to be the ultimate now to finally come out of Dizzy. They need to get that same conversion. They're kind of struggling right now. Nothing just yet. There's the Death Blossom commit. It's the Nano Blossom. We Beyblade now, boys. But the kills still come back the way of Ardeont anyway. They kept the key tanks alive. And ultimately, these 2 Death Blossom kills were just too expensive and didn't get enough done. Ardeont still had plenty of resources to hit back.
And that looked like a damage control measure by AHQ. They wanted to use the Nano Blossom to try and bring the game back, because the actual game plan was to use a blender. They had the Graviton Surge, they had the whole hog from He as well, but as soon as the grab came down, Erster put up an ice wall. He tried to get around the side with the whole hog. He was slept immediately by Jeff, so those 2 players, Erster and Jeff, completely stopped up AHQ.
Man, is Ersten just showing off here now? It's not a bad pick actually in this situation because it just puts this pressure down, right? AHQ don't have any members that can contest high grounds. Hanzo's kind of the ideal pick to pop up here. Now, once again, Ardeont are going to be able to hold. AHQ can no longer cap, but in overtime.
Yep, and 30 seconds left to go now. Still going to stick onto the same thing, but no ultimates. We've seen situations now for AHQ where even with ultimates, they fail to really execute, or rather, Ardeont have had the correct counterplays. Now, without any ultimates, you got to think this is going to be a big struggle for AHQ, and they don't have the momentum either.
And would you look at the time, can't Ryan shield if the Ryan is facing the wrong way, but they are able to weather that storm, getting Republic in the mix. They just barely keep Dizzy and Eric alive, but that's a great catch on carries. Makes it pretty hard to top off Dizzy and Eric now, as Ardeont still yet to be dislodged, and the respawn for Republic way closer now. Nano boost onto Michelle, already getting work done. Grab from Dizzy, too deep for anyone to follow up, and the sound barrier there just keeping them safe. Heck, even Animo is able to survive it, and now it's the Graviton out of Michelle that's going to do the work at the end of the day when all is said and done. And Ardeont, at so many points, nearly full held AHQ, and naturally, it was just the one that it happened to be on.
AHQ had a really decent run onto Streets phase and B. That was where you saw the most momentum out of them, and they got that push off the back of a really nice cap out onto A as well, which really kind of put Ardeont in a bit of a weird spot. As soon as Ardeont actually got control again, as soon as Ardeont maintained tempo and got the pacing back in their hands, again, just like on Ilios, they dictate that. They tell you where the fight's going to take place, and they tell you who's going to do what. And the counterplays from Ardeont specifically were so good.
I'm going to be honest, that was completely one-sided. There was this really solid moment for AHQ in that Streets phase, but in a funny way, that's almost like a mirror of Ilios, right? Where you had just like one of 3 places that was really good for AHQ. On Ilios, it was Ruins. On King's Row, it was their Streets phase attack. But to be honest, the rest of their attacks really struggled. Their defense, I mean, I don't want to say it was non-existent because it was there, but it just kept getting knocked down and knocked down and knocked down. At no point did they really contest Ardeont in any significant fashion. And unsurprisingly, that now puts Ardeont 2-0 up in the series. It was already uphill for AHQ, but having not secured that Ilios win and looking, to be honest, pretty lackluster there on King's Row, you've really got to question their ability to even get one back now.
And that's all off the back of Ardeont's well-timed attacks. I mean, they timed their offenses, defenses, however you want to call it, whatever they did, everything they did was timed to the T. And like the best example again was on that on the B, on the Streets phase, when they sort of just managed to get in and get the kills before AHQ got the ultimates. But even defensively, you saw the fact that as soon as they stabilized, as soon as Ardeont got control back of their pacing, and they said, this is where we're making our stand, this is where we want a team fight, then they're back in control entirely, and AHQ no longer get to dictate anything. AHQ tried to make some plays which are good, but those plays were just countered by again, just good decision making off the back of Ardeont, good ice wall to block out the Graviton Surge, good sleep dart from Jeff to knock out he on the whole hog, using the whole hog as well. So everything AHQ wanted to use was just counted out by Ardeont exactly as they needed.
Exactly, and that was the advantage in the end of actually attacking first. They got the cap, they got it in spectacular time as well. The moment they nearly held out on point A, they actually knew that they could seed the entirety of Streets phase and just use it as a space to bleed AHQ drive ultimates, so that when they could get themselves back online in terms of their own ultimate economy and their own positional play on the 3rd point, they had plenty of space to do so. They were at no threat of being capped in any significantly similar amount of time compared to what they capped. And in the end, they were actually able to full hold anyway. Like, if you were Ardeont, you would have been more than happy for AHQ to actually still cap, but have them really have to work double time for it, only get it in the overtime, if at all. And the fact that they were then able to actually fully hold out is just kind of cherry on top.
And that's the thing, right? Because for AHQ, I think the possibility for them to finish the map was there. If they were going to do it, you kind of did expect it to happen in overtime, especially after Ardeont had stabilized. Had Ardeont not stabilized and it was an AHQ roll on through with momentum all the way from A into C and just finishing it, that might have been a different story. But now let's get into some replays.
And this was Ardeont on the attack. Look, you can already see how much space AHQ have had to cede. No one's really ideally set up. Dizzy's been contested, now has to drop down to the ground, which means he's not even putting pressure onto the point itself where Ardeont are actually positioned. And on the whole, like AHQ almost got taken by surprise. Like before they even took any damage, they were backing up from Ardeont. That just gave Ardeont free reign on this point to basically do what they want. The fact that they capped getting a full team wipe and a gong was huge. And really, this just set the scene, right? At no point beyond that did AHQ really get even more than 2 kills in return.
And Ardeont they set that one up so well, and kind of AHQ on the other hand kind of gave it to them too, because position for AHQ has to be really important there, especially you're playing Tracer Soldier. The Soldier positioning is what's going to win you the game. Tracers, they kind of work together here. Soldier buys room for Tracer to work in the backline, and then Tracer also buys the Soldier room on his own backlines also. That in tandem is AHQ's win condition, and as soon as that entire team gets pushed back, Rapid's way forward from his perspective, Dizzy's way back, and no one can really help each other out there, and then you have a situation where AHQ tries to go back in, everybody just melts, and it looked like a minimal effort take from Ardeont. It just looked very effortless.
The truth is, once you're playing positional catch-up in that situation, once you're trying to rally and regroup, even if no one's dead yet, once you're in that situation as the defender there, the attacker gets plenty of time on the point, they get plenty of time to set up themselves, because that's the one thing you have as the defender. You get the positional advantage for being able to set up. Once the attacker is set up on the point, they become the defender, you become the attacker. And if you aren't successful on that one attack, the other team is going to cap the point, no two ways about it. That's how Ardeont were able to be successful, and Ardeont did totally capitalize on the space they made. They also came in such a way that AHQ did kind of seed that space. I don't want to say they were taken by surprise, it wasn't exactly that, but certainly AHQ gave them more space than was necessary. Yep. On the whole, AHQ just didn't really fight for it, and they put themselves in a situation where they then had to fight for it, or it was just going to be nothing.
And AHQ needed to be aggressive then, and needed to take control. Let's go into this replay and take a look at what it feels like when it's AHQ on the attack instead. Note that both teams kind of matched each other compositionally here, which is interesting off the bat because both teams kind of read this. And overall, this is a good lead so far for AHQ because what they've done is they've cut off the retreat path for Ardeont. So Ardeont can't actually go back to their own spawn here. They're sort of forced into a position where Dizzy can pincer move around the other side. And they should be able to pick up a decent number of kills here, but it does turn very quickly when the ultimates start coming out. I believe Michelle gets a Graviton Surge at some point because he stays alive. Note how much further ahead in ultimates he is compared to Dizzy.
And this is what you see here. AHQ got to the point where they couldn't chase any further for kills. They kind of had to back up into the point, which actually allowed them to be surrounded. Exactly, Michelle just lives there. Ardeont were able to take the high ground. They got Republic and Ersteron on the respawn who came in from behind. And suddenly, actually, AHQ found themselves surrounded. So because they weren't able to close out those extra kills, because Ardeont maneuvered such that they couldn't safely be chased by AHQ, they put themselves in a position such that they could surround AHQ. Now, you got to say, AHQ ideally should have read that. It's this really difficult situation because you do want to get onto the point so that you can get progress on it. That's how you cap. That's the point of attacking. And when you've got a numbers advantage, that feels like the right thing to do, but realistically, by doing that, they actually let themselves completely exposed because for all the chaos of that fight, for all the maneuvering that AHQ did, and for all the numbers advantage they had, the one thing they did not do that Ardeont did do on their attack is set up positionally. Ardeont on their defense held on to the position so well that even with only 3 of them, they could stay alive. And when the other 3 respawned, they still had the positional advantage to close in on AHQ.
I think to be fair, AHQ's positioning there was the same positioning they had when they actually won it. So when you go to the final fight where they actually camped A, what really gets achieved out of AHQ's composition is when the Reaper's set up in the middle there, he's going to be able to tank out all the tanks. No one can contest him. That's kind of the reason why at the end there, when Ardeont finally had to back off and finally had to cede the cap, that's when AHQ was quite successful. The biggest change-up is the difference in killing Michelle and not killing Michelle. Let's go into the next replay now to sort of find out what happens next. But yeah, killing Michelle was absolutely critical there, and they just couldn't do it.
And speaking of couldn't do it, this was a really nice setup by Erster, ice-walling himself up so that he could lob that over top of the Reinhardt shield and catch the team out. Look, he didn't even have to kill anyone at that point, but it meant that AHQ had to split up. They couldn't all back the whole way across the blizzard. So you got this situation where Keras was kind of stuck forward. You had the tanks trying to move back. Someone like Dizzy can probably get out. The Reaper can Wraith walk out. The Reinhardt, if he's got charge up, can kind of turn tail and charge out. Roadhog, not so much. Yeah. Lucio, not so much. Ana was stuck on the wrong side of it, and they kind of had to move in all directions, and you just end up split.
That was actually, it ended up being a decent fallout from AHQ when you consider they only lost 2 people. You expected a lot more people to go down. considering how many people the Blizzard caught, they managed to get a lot of members out alive and only lose 2, which is a really good damage control maneuver by AHQ when you consider, you know, what the expectation was. That was the one good, I guess, if you can even call it a counterplay that they made against one of the Ardeont offensive weapons there. But otherwise, when you look at how Ardeont handled AHQ's offensive there, Ardeont's counterplays were so much more effective because they were able to get the counter kills instead. So if you imagine a situation when AHQ not only got caught in a blizzard, but somehow they managed to kill all of Ardeont while they were caught in a blizzard, that's kind of like what Ardeont were doing to AHQ on the flip side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. You're completely right. It was great damage control. But the unfortunate thing is, despite how good the damage control was, it was still 2 members dead. It was still a numerical disadvantage, and it was still very few tools left to try and recontest Ardeont from that point. So it still results in a fight win, and a similarly cheap fight win as all of Ardeont seem to be.
All right, well, that's going to be the 2-0 so far in the series. AHQ Esports now down a couple of maps, and it may just be lights out for them if they don't bring it back onto map 3. And that's going to happen after this break, so don't go anywhere. Thank you for sticking through that break with us as we're about to head into map 3 of the series now with Ardeont and AHQ facing off against each other in the final week of regular season play in OPC Season 2, and now potentially only one map separates these two teams from an Ardeont 3-0.
And we kind of talked about it at the start of the series as well. AHQ, they kind of need to win this, and it's probably the hardest matchup they'll have this weekend to win. The reason they need to win this is because if they don't, then their ability to make top 4 is kind of out of their hands. And that is assuming they actually still win their matchups against Blank and Hong Kong Attitude, which, by the way, they still very much may not. So it's an unfortunately back-footed situation, if you will, for AHQ. Going to be taking it to Hanamura for the assault pick, and they do get the assault pick themselves, but from here, they need to get one back on the board. That will be an achievement in and of itself, given that that would make them only the second team this tournament to take at least one map off Ardeont. Turning the entire series around from there is an almost impossible task right now.
Yeah, and I think getting the map wins itself will be really important, not just because they'll be the second team to done that, but actually on top of that would be the fact that in terms of the map scores, when it comes to tiebreaker scenario, that's going to really help them get ahead of Blank, who are kind of going to be, Blank are going to be unexpected to be taking maps on Ardeont. In fact, everyone is unexpected to be taking maps off of Ardeont, even Flash Wolves at this stage, even though Flash Wolves have been the only team to have done that so far. So any team that does get a map off Ardeont is going to be really putting themselves into a nice spot.
Well, and the only other teams after this who are in contention for top 4 with the ability to take map wins off Ardeont are, like you said, Blank, and then the other one is, of course, Flash Wolves. So AHQ, you're right, if they do pick up a map win here, that at least puts them a little bit ahead in terms of a potential head-to-head with Hong Kong Attitude. It could maybe put them ahead in the potential head-to-head against Blank. That is, of course, assuming Blank don't pick up any map wins against Ardeont either. On the whole, though, you've still got to read it as being this situation where AHQ's ability to make top 4 is slowly becoming very much out of their hands. Unless they do pick up that map win here, it's kind of their last opportunity to affect their own ability to make playoffs. And I gotta say it again, that is only if they also beat Hong Kong Attitude and Blank. If they lose this here, and they lose either one of those two matchups, that's it. They do not make playoffs.
Yeah, so this entire weekend becomes really important for everybody, especially in AHQ, considering where they are on the standings, which is in 5th place currently, and top 4 is the cutoff rather to make it into the playoffs. So really important for AHQ above any team to get those wins, but it's, you know, certainly for Blank and Hong Kong Attitude as well. So those are going to be very interesting matchups. And now for Ardeont, it's about asserting dominance, maintaining their first place position on that ladder, making sure they head into playoffs in the #1 seed.
The thing that would be almost unfortunate about it is AHQ, for all their good performances, finishing 5th would kind of be a reflection of Season 1, really, with the 2 new additions being Ardeont also into that top team kind of area, and Hong Kong Attitude, who were already making that kind of movement in Season 1, finally completing that, right? You're still in that position relative to the other teams, and now they've got to try and break this, hold this point as well as they can. Off to an okay start, but losing the tanks does mean Ardeont can set themselves up here pretty nicely. Animo, the only healer, they need to actually contest DM here, also need to close out in Republic, and they set a trap for Rapid as he comes onto the point, which means no closeout in Republic. Ardeont already first, third, and AHQ are actually kind of coming in for what is their last-ditch moments now. Do get DM and can reclaim control of this point, but that was very back-footed.
Dizzy rather got a lot of kills here, got a lot of damage control, so despite the fact that they lost the Orisa very quickly, they got Crappy's turret a number of times, but they never killed Dizzy, and Dizzy was one that was getting people in steel traps, he's hitting people with grenades, concussive mines, he's one that really saved that one for AHQ.
They've got some nice kind of setup here just between the Torbjorn and Junkrat. It makes it quite hard for Ardeont to get into this ground safely. There's a lot of upfront spam damage you're having to fight through, and it's starting to show. AHQ just kind of tidied it up this time, not letting any members go down this time around as they're converting the kills.
There's still members from the Ardeont side that are just stuck here. That's how Jeff goes down. That's how Michelle goes down as well. So now you're waiting for these late respawners. Ursa going on to Farah as well is really interesting. That's going to try. He's going to try and directly counter out Dizzy, and indirectly now directly counter out Crappy as well, because you can get the turret down with the rockets. You can kill Dizzy when he can't contest you. That's going to be really important for Ardeont moving forward.
And that's the thing, it is really an if, because actually Ursa can just as easily go down to the turret if he's not careful, if he's too busy focusing on other things. Nano boost onto Eric, immediately converts onto Jeff, and now they're just pressuring the members of Ardeont who are trying to set up around the side here. There are a few members that did make it past. That's a good pulse bomb out of DM actually, but honestly Ardeont still at a big numerical disadvantage here. Molten Core was also committed though, so that's now off the table.
So waiting for this Riptide to come out of Dizzy as well. Note Dizzy's, the fact that he's still alive is really important for this team. Ardeont, you really haven't seen the big contest onto the Junkrat so far, so Dizzy's had a great game. He's just had a positioning where continuing to get kills, DM goes down now, yes, Crappy and Turret goes down, but now the equalizer may just be the Riptide.
Yeah, and it's got to wait out the sound barrier. Republic smartly using the Primal Rage as well so that he can't be insta-killed by it. Suddenly Dizzy struggling for targets. Does get Erster, but they're losing members in the time it took him to get that tire into position. And the point is actually still controlled here by Ardeont. All these members are able to avoid the self-destruct from Hehe as well, still converting the kills. Would have been nice to have that Transcendence, but the lack of it is not going to hurt Ardeont. They still get the point cap.
And the most important kill there was actually that Ursa killed Dizzy with the Rocket Barrage while Dizzy was trying to find a Riptide kill. So Dizzy just couldn't get that Riptide out of the way quick enough. If he had, he would have been able to defend himself against Ursa. But because he wasn't, Ursa taking him down is a fair enough trade. You eliminated the biggest problem that prevented you from capping. And as soon as Dizzy did go down, that was a cap out.
Now this is another situation we've seen AHQ do incredibly well. They've been able to hold a lot of teams in this exact spot on Hanamura. And a lot of it was Dizzy's spam damage with this exact angle. There they go, getting the convert onto Erster as they're just kind of spamming out Republic and Michelle both. And it pays off for them. Dizzy barely just staying alive, but he is alive. That's what counts.
Once again, this is just Ardeont struggling to get into the positioning that they want to because they're onto the Soldier now, because this is Ursa's current pick, and you kind of have to question why the Genji wasn't picked in instead, knowing that it's very likely Dizzy continues playing the Junkrat. In fact, now that you're playing to Crappy's turret as well, for Ardeont, you really have to try and get that top right positioning, but because Dizzy's there, it's just not going to happen. He's not going to let you do that. So once again, you got to deal with Dizzy first if you can.
And that's the thing, the Soldier makes sense in terms of securing the point once you're on it by getting him on that high ground, but I mean, it's uphill exactly because of Dizzy and his setup. And you're also very much behind in the ultimate game here. DM getting a good catch, but here's the Riptire out, and Rapid is coming in for the wraparound as well. Doesn't actually get anything with it, unfortunately. Good Transcendence from Jeff, and they convert the kill. So now that wraparound from Rapid doesn't mean much. He has to get back into the fight. AHQ, they still need to convert some kills in response as well. Gonna lose Hehe, and unfortunately, just kind of losing control of this area now, losing these members. Ardeont just kind of reading the setup, not letting themselves fall into AHQ's trap, not letting themselves get surrounded, and taking advantage of the numerical advantage in the places where they had it. Now already 2/3 on this point. AHQ are about to be broken here if just a few more members go down, and this is looking really unfortunate for them, and a very quick time for Ardeont. Just need to get the last few across the line as the respawns come in. Stall tools all out from AHQ. Self-destruct does at least get one, but they're still struggling to get anything more than that. Maybe still able to stabilize, but they need to get more kills than this, and they're just not getting them. They just keep losing these members time and time again as they respawn. Now it's Eric, now it's Hehe, plus Dizzy, Rapid as well, and that should be the cap going through to Ardeont.
Once again, the adaptation from Ardeont was exactly how they won A. What was the biggest issue there? It was Dizzy. What's the biggest issue once again at B? It's still Dizzy. And every time Dizzy has died, which has only been twice, it's because he used Riptire, and someone from the Ardeont side was able to kill Dizzy inside the Riptire channel while he was busy trying to get a kill on the other side. It doesn't matter that Dizzy got himself a return kill because he's not getting enough. It's not like he got a triple kill with the Riptire. He gets one. Getting one and then dying, eliminating the biggest issue on the defense, that's what consistently gives Ardeont the area that they need and consistently gives them the opening to allow them to get the cap.
And I mentioned it at the time as well, but Rapid was looking for this kind of wraparound play. It is exactly what he had done in the prior fight, where the entirety of Ardeont was just stuck between the Junkrat spam damage from the front, and then Rapid from behind. And a whole bunch of kills got cleaned up. But that is quite a slow thing for Rapid to set up for. He has to loop around quite a long way to get in behind the team safely. And that was the time during which Dizzy died. So suddenly there was this numerical advantage for Ardeont on the point itself, where there was only the tanks and healers, which they took full advantage of. That was very cleanly executed by Ardeont and very well read.
Yeah, they're able to read the situations. They're able to see exactly what the difficulties are. Why are they not able to cap in? Why can't they find the openings? What it is about that AHQ defense that's completely stopping them up. And time again, they identify what that is and they identify the best way to neutralize it. And it's interesting that it's kind of by AHQ's own hands that it happens. For Dizzy, all he kind of needs to do there is to be able to get a quicker Riptide play, or actually just to use Riptide in a safer location where he can't just get killed, or have his team back him up and protect him while he's channeling the Riptide. That would have made a lot of difference there. It was just off the back of the fact that taking Dizzy down first was so critical.
It does appear we have another pause out right now. Doesn't look like it should be too long, and we will hopefully be able to get that resolved nice and soon for you. I also noticed, by the way, Crappy is wearing a hat that says chillax, which I think is quite good advice. Like, the only unfortunate thing is he's the only member of the team that can't read it. Like, the rest of the team can look at him and read it and remind, like, oh yeah, chillax, it's gonna be fine. But like Crappy himself, he may forget to chillax.
Well, the thing is, Selene went on the Yeezus tour, but Crappy went on the chillax tour. So I mean, that's the difference between the two guys right now.
Well,
and
like, he learned, like,
Gumba went on the Overwatch tour because he's got an Overwatch cap on.
And like, what's the chillax tour? Like, do you just learn how to be calm? Like, you go and learn, like, I don't know.
That's when you learn, like, to Nepal.
And you learn meditation skills. Exactly. And,
that's the chillax tour. That's what Genji did before he became a cyborg.
Genji went on the chillax tour. Yeah. Exactly. Lucio went on the Yeezus tour.
Yeah, well, that's very accurate.
And well, all the members of Overwatch itself went on the Overwatch tour. So that's what? That's Ana, that's Soldier, that's Tracer, Winston, Reinhardt. It's the whole lot of them.
Yeah. Overwatch tour ends kind of poorly though, so I hope that's not a bad omen for Blank.
What if that's actually what it comes down to? Well, I think Lucio's still actually on tour as well. Like, even though he recently...
he's technically, if you look at the Numbani posters,
it's like
he's technically on tour.
He recently led an uprising in Brazil, like a political uprising against the government, and he's still on a musical tour. Like, I think that's pretty incredible. Like, what did you do with your day?
Also, how does Bastion explode into robot parts while he's falling down? Note that he explodes in midair before he lands on the ground.
It's like a self-destruct protocol for the robot. Like, you reckon, like, if you're about to die, you self-destruct, so that like your I don't know, so that your programming can't be recovered. Here we go, and people can't hack into the Omniums to wrest control back from the AI. That's what it is. Gotcha.
Also, he's a robot, and that wasn't, you know, it's a big fall, but not a big fall for a robot. Anyway, questions remained unanswered.
Well, I mean, D.Va like loses the mech and then also dies. Like, you'd think,
and the mech flies.
Yeah, you'd think at least the mech would survive. But I mean, hey, you never know. Well, at any rate, HQ now need to break this hold. They've got the good tools for it. We're seeing Dizzy back on the Widowmaker. They do need to convert with it. That's a good catch, actually. Erster going to try and pressure out Dizzy. They've got the dive in, from DM as well. Indeed, where's the support? Well, here it finally comes in the form of Eric. Now, actually, it's Erster kind of caught on the wrong side of that. Well reacted to by AHQ, but they need to get back on the aggressive now.
It was a little bit of a risky play from AHQ because the cavalry eventually arrives in the form of Eric, but what if Erster had managed to get that kill into Dizzy? He would have had the dash reset gone back to his own team, but now because AHQ's opened up the space, Dizzy's going to town, and this is how they won Ruins.
Yeah, the catch on DM was the one that really swung it. I mean, up till that point, they had actually just lost Rapid before that, so they didn't really have heaps of DPS affecting the space, but now they've still got the sight lines. Dizzy's going to be uncontested. They're just securing out these last few kills. Ardeont might want to go in for a last-ditch contest. They do tend to, but AHQ should be able to hold it.
It would be very risky, and the fact that they're not here would say that Ardeont's going for that B hold. Now, the problem for AHQ is, how do they snowball from here? Because Dizzy's now swapped onto the Soldier. You don't have a tactical visor. If you can get both support ultimates up online, you're going to be able to out-sustain Ardeont. So that's one way to get this cap in. You'd expect AHQ to maybe get 1 or 2/3 here, because other than that, this is how AHQ can win. If they don't kind of get a good lead here, they just might not cap at all.
Looking for the Pulse Bomb on the back end. Good dive to catch Eric. Pulse Bomb does take out Crappy though, and they need to convert onto Animo here. Not quite able to do it. There we go, getting it over the line. Now they've got to get the rest of these kills. Third Pulse Bomb doesn't quite get the kill though. Nice pop off there just towards the end. HQ just shy of a third right now, and Ardeont are going to make this expensive if AHQ are able to get it at all. That's a good catch onto Erster. They should be able to keep the pressure on here. That self-destruct from He. Michelle will be able to match, but DM getting a huge headshot. And now the kills just starting to come through for Ardeont. That was the third for AHQ, but it's not looking good for them getting a second third now. They're just not quite converting these extra kills. As I say that, they get it over. Actually, Ardeont stepping off the point for a moment. Now actually they're having a bit of a hard time contesting the point itself, given that DM's on this Widowmaker that can't safely stand on the point. It's going to be an expensive closeout for Ardeont here, but they should still be able to stabilize off this with that respawn advantage and with that Dragon Blade picking up a couple of crucial kills.
This is going to be the end of the push now for AHQ, and it was a little bit slow, but they managed to get the 2/3, so that needed to be kind of the minimum take for them. Now they have the space to get that final third, especially since Kerry has actually kept his Transcendence, but you did expect that AHQ in that initial push, if they were going to use double support ultimates, maybe the possibility for them to get the full cap out was there. And actually DM going to the Widow is a good adaptation, because knowing double supports come into effect, you can get a headshot kill inside the Transcendence, so even then, Carriers might not have been able to do enough work.
CHQ still just trying to get the setup here. They've got this tactical visor for themselves. Good catch on the Jeff, and DM's off the Widowmaker now. So if AHQ can get set up, there we go indeed, getting all the kills through. The nano boost onto Republic just isn't pulling any weight. This is nearly a gong from AHQ. The tactical visor all used up, and Dizzy is safely in position. It's He getting the kills somehow, but that is the final third. That's all they needed to get. Was already off to a stellar start for that last fight, and they've got far more time than Ardeont do.
And this has been a far more dominant map for AHQ than any of the other two that we've seen so far. It's kind of the fact that AHQ have been this really great snowball team. You can see what they do when they get the momentum in their favor. You can see what they do when they start sliding down that mountain. And this is a very difficult AHQ squad to stop if they can get that snowball rolling. And Ardeont, they have managed to sustain themselves and stabilize in a number of situations. You look at Kings Row C, that's when they were able to stop the snowball. When they do, Ardeont can get the full hold. But if you do not stop the snowball, AHQ do what they just did here on Hanamura, and they get the full cap out. And the fact they got 2/3 on the first cap, that was so instrumental into leading to the eventual full cap out of the last third.
Yeah, I was expecting that it would maybe take just a little bit longer, but then getting that huge pulse bomb kill was really what swung it towards the end. You do have to ask yourself the question now, though, what do AHQ pull out on the defense?
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing, but the thing is, part of why their time was so good compared to Ardeont was because they were able to stop up Ardeont for quite a while on both A and B, even though Ardeont capped. But the reason Ardeont capped was because eventually they figured out the AHQ defense and were able to crack it.
So here's what the difference needs to be here for both teams. Ardeont needs to still put the pressure onto Dizzy. If they can kill Dizzy earlier, you'd expect an even quicker cap from Ardeont. But on the counter side to that, if AHQ can protect Dizzy properly, especially when Dizzy's mid-channeling Riptide, make sure he lives through that ultimate, that's when AHQ can really threaten the full A hold.
Nice set up for now. He though getting very pressured. Able to, unfortunately, no, it goes down on the pullback. And they pick Crappy off as well. The only one they've lost themselves is Republic. AHQ very much on the back foot now. And that's the thing, Ardeont, they already knew how to crack this. It's really just a case of doing the same thing again. Now Eric, very caught out alone on the point, going to go down here. And unfortunately, Ardent's just all over AHQ here, not able to stall them up a significant amount.
Good moves by Ursa there to sort of read the timings on the cooldowns against Dizzy there to make sure that he was going to be able to dive in when both concussive minds were down and there wasn't going to be a trap to stop him as well. So now they've kind of worked around Dizzy instead of dealing with him first. They got everyone else out of the picture, and Dizzy was going to hide in and bunker down in that hole of his that he usually hides in on the left, where DM just walked past. But unfortunately, Ursa, good movements, good timing, good read on the situation, picks out Dizzy, and now we're already on to B.
Crappy swapped off and then back on. That means they're now far away from that Molten Core, plus they don't have the armor economy up. Picking Ursa early is a bit of a saving grace for them. They're able to keep their members alive, but they've still got to hold out for a full 2 minutes.
The goal here for AHQ is to be able to hold out without even 1/3 going away to Ardeont. If they can do that, then you can expect the possibility of AHQ actually winning this map, and it looks very real after. If Ardeont get the full cap out, suddenly things look very tricky for AHQ. So it has to be a full hold, or Ardeont are probably still going to win.
Yeah, certainly is the case. Or at the very least, it again puts AHQ back onto the back foot. They need to convert some early kills. Pulse Bomb into the mix, but they lose Keres, and already these conversions coming through. Eric going down as well, looking rough in terms of getting a third. Not able to get any of those crucial ultimates off. And this Riptide is going to have to be big. He's trying to loop it around. Does get Jeff, but they got to get the people that are on the point. They lose Crappy once again. And the Dragon Blade is just killing anyone who starts coming out of spawn. Dizzy just barely staying alive, but he's not the ideal member to contest the point. That's a job belonging right now to He and Eric both, who need to commit these ultimates and get something with them. Dizzy going down makes it that much harder for them to convert kills on the defensive, but they have held on for a minute now, and they're starting to rebuff Ardeont just barely with a slim numerical advantage. They had to throw everything they had at it, but they've held, and now only need to hold one more time.
And this is the thing about Dizzy onto the Junkrat, because he's always able to get these 2-for-1s, if not even more, 3-for-1 kills. He's able to pump out so much damage that even if he does go down, the rest of AHQ, especially on the B, they can respawn with that respawn advantage on the defense here and just overwhelm the attack from Ardeont. So now you're going to see a situation. Ursa's got to try and set up on top. Where's Dizzy? Because he needs to be the one that dislodges Ursa.
Good takedown on the turret, and that means the Molten Core isn't able to do too much.
There he is.
Good pick on Ursa, and they pressure out Michelle, getting DM as well on the backside. Great headshot from Crappy, and that's the last fight that AHQ will need to win. Already off to a great start. Just looking to close outs now. Sorry, Primal Rage has run out for Republic. The defensive ultimates are here,
Dizzy.
but they can't save anyone. Jeff and Animo cannot commit them. Ardeont now just going to have to dive in and hope that members can survive for long enough for those supports to get in, but it is not looking good. DM the last one there. Erster may want to barrel in, but with that nano boost on Eric, no one's getting past him. That is the hold that AHQ need.
And that is such a great hold, and now suddenly it's so winnable for AHQ. They just got to get that 1/3, and they got so much more time to work with than even Ardeont did. So Ardeont, you got to be sweating just a little bit. The way Ardeont bounced back here and forced a draw is if Ardeont can get a good hold on A. In fact, if they get a full hold on A, they just win. But we're not expecting a full hold here. AHQ do a great job of capping out A. So what do Ardeont do then? You got to bleed out the timer as much as possible and then go for that draw onto B.
I think we do still have to respect, though, as the last time we said this off AHQ, that it was very winnable for them, was on Ilios. They had the ruins, they lost well, and they were off to a good start on Lighthouse. 97%, and Ardeont was still able to bring it back and win it out. So, look, no lead is ever enough to beat Ardeont. The only thing that is enough is being better than them.
The good news is, at least on a map like Hanamura and a game mode like Assault, you can put yourself in a really good position. Certainly much more favorable than on a control map where, you know, it's a lot more difficult to stabilize there. But now we're on to Hanamura, I think, you know, this is definitely the best shot AHQ's ever had, and certainly maybe even the best shot any team has ever had, especially on Assault.
I've never seen that one before.
It's a
Believe
moonwalk.
it or not,
It's a moonwalk on the sun.
It's a dragon walk. It's not on the moon.
Dragons don't walk, they fly.
If you think about it, every walk on Horizon Lunar Colony is a moonwalk.
Oh wow, yep.
But Zenyatta can't do it because he floats.
It's gonna moon float.
It's a moon float. Like where you float backwards and it looks like you're floating forward. Wow. Well, this is going to be the hold now from Ardeont. AHQ going to need to crack this defense, need to get this and then the first third on point B. And that is still very defendable for Ardeont.
This is just, you know, Dizzy going fishing here, because eventually you'd expect Dizzy to get a headshot, and he does, but on himself.
Yeah, good deflect from Erster, and you're completely right. Yeah, nice headshot. Dizzy is extremely accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when Tracers are so good, they bomb themselves too.
Yeah, exactly, because that's how you maximize kills. It's like how once upon a time, dying to your own Riptire as Junkrat actually counted towards total kills for player of the game. So if you Riptired in front of you, killed yourself and one other person, there was a good chance you'd get player of the game.
All right, well, AHQ, and I'll be looking for something a little bit more than player of the game here. And for Ardeont, I think this is a bit of just a ticking time bomb, because AHQ, again, if you can't deal with Dizzy, and Ursa has been the one trying to deal with Dizzy, eventually you expect Dizzy to get those shots in.
Oh! Up until this point, they had only been 1 for 1. Dizzy had it the first time and Erster had it the second, but with that one, Erster kind of swings it 2 for 1 in his favor. Now you've actually got to say, the pressure is kind of on AHQ to get work done out of Dizzy. I don't feel like this is a ticking time bomb for Ardeont anymore, because they've started to really get a handle on dealing with this cob, and actually Dizzy's changed off.
Well, yeah, the bomb has been defused for sure, because Dizzy's the one who's going to defuse his own bomb. He's going onto the soldier now, so it's going to be a standard push out. I don't even know if I agree with that, because realistically, realistically, if you stay onto the Widow, now that double support ultimates come online for Ardeont, one of the ways you bypass that is actually you headshot one of the supports, you knock out one of the ultimates, and you use your own double support ultimates. But now, I don't know, back to the old-fashioned Overwatch, I guess.
Good pressure on Erster, but they seem to have just lost track of him as the fight breaks out in earnest. Now he's there to cut off the retreat path, and they're not exactly in a favorable situation to close out on him. AHQ were happy to just keep committing to try and force ultimates out of Ardeont, but the only ones they got were the Pulse Bomb and Primal Rage. AHQ are still on the back foot, and by the way, they haven't finished retreating yet either. Ardeont are just going to stall this out as long as possible and try and get as many late kills as possible.
Well, mind you, AHQ spawn a lot closer, so this all works in the favor. Every kill AHQ gets just works so much better for them.
Except for when Republic trades you 2 for 2, AHQ need to get a lot more than that because those were their DPSs. Now they've got to commit their own defensive ultimates just to keep the tanks in the fight so that the DPS can rejoin later. They convert onto Republic though, and that could be what swings it. Erster is looking for a Dragon Blade. They're going to have to hold on to that Transcendence. Oh no, he goes down to DM. Erster's able to wrap back around, and Dizzy and Rapid finally back in the fight are going to be the ones who have to do this. Rapid off to a good start. They need to close this out quickly. They do not have much time to get that third on the second point, and every second here counts, even as they finally get these kills across the line.
And Eric's got to be the MVP right here, who's able to get it across the line for AHQ, despite Dizzy going down, despite Rapid going down. Those early respawns, and the fact that the respawn distance is so much shorter, does get Rapid and Dizzy back in the fight. It's a Tracer and a Soldier. They can get back super quickly. Ursa dying with Dragon Blade, that really hurts them. Kerry's dying with Transcendence, that really hurt AHQ as well. But the silver lining is Kerry's now gets to use this on Camp B, and they only need 1/3, and they have the ultimate snowball in.
Yeah, they've got all these tools. Oh, what a headshot from Jeff, though. That slows this one up, gives them plenty of time to charge. AHQ need to be very prudent with committing ultimates here. Smartly, they commit none, but this gives Ardeont a window to charge up some of their own.
Oh, that's a tough one to watch because Ardeont now get the ultimates, like you kind of said here. Republic is about to hit that Primal Rage, and the difference now is AHQ in terms of timing, in terms of pacing. They were dictating that previously. They were able to snowball in a lot of ultimates in their favor. Now, because they've had the reset to wait for both Rapid and Hiki, you just gave ults to the other side, and now Ardeont can defend.
Exactly that. And I mean, they had a window as well. Jeff had actually died quite late in the preceding fight. That was also in their favor. So now, I mean, it's just more uphill than it was before. It doesn't mean they can't do it, but it is going to be a harder ask. Looking to try and get set up on this high ground. Rapid, low, yeah, Dizzy is set up, but they need to keep these members alive. Eric kind of having to commit the Primal Rage here. Republic does commit his own. HQ need to convert these kills, though. Rapid does at least go 1 for 1 this time. They need to get a bit more. Good catch on Republic. And again, Eric's the one going off. Visor is good. Pulse Bomb is wide. DM's pressured out. All they need is that third. Don't forget that. Michelle's dead. Animo's pressured out. DM's off to the side. Respawn starting to come in.
Where's Jeff?
HQ, they need to get on this point quick, smart. They're on it. There's Jeff. And they've got the ultimates to turn this one back around here, Ardeont, but they need to get kills off them. They're still struggling to do that. Nothing yet with the Dragon Blade. Now trying to dislodge Dizzy, but it's already Republic so low. Erster getting 1, but they trade it back on Republic. AHQ, they're so nearly there. It is so within their sights, but they're still not done yet, Ardeont. They need to get these last few. And Erster, they're turning it back around. I don't believe it. And AHQ, that's so mind-bogglingly close, but they just can't make it happen. I don't believe it. We're going to Golden Point.
That was, that's unbelievable. Ardeont have, and I should not be surprised because it is Ardeont, but they've just achieved what looked almost impossible. I mean, Animo coming out with the sound barrier in the last minute there. Jeff just buying his own team enough time with the Transcendence. Everything just kind of getting Ardeont over the line. Nothing looks super impressive. Everything looks a little bit desperate, but enough of that desperation play is just enough for Ardeont to get a win. And even Ursa failing to capitalize on the Dragon Blade. Dizzy, Tactical Visor, caught everyone. Republic dies in the middle of Primal Rage. I mean, AHQ, they had that one in the bag, and it's just, this has got to be the most heartbreaking loss. And it's not even a loss, it's a draw, but it feels like a loss.
It kind of does, and like we said, you do go to Golden Point. Now, AHQ do get to pick the map for that as well, given that this was their map pick for Hanamura. But again, I mean, for something that was so in their sights, they haven't got it over the line yet, and are now very much at risk of just falling short of the mark, which is exactly what happened on Ilios. They had it in their sights, they had it 1-to-1, they had that 97% on Lighthouse, and they just fell short of the mark, unfortunately. So, look, close is never good enough against Ardeont. There is no lead that is big enough on its own to be insurmountable. There is no way you can beat Ardeont unless you are just better at playing the game. Full stop.
You definitely made Ardeont sweat though. If you've done nothing else, there's at least that. The water bottles are out, the switch towels are out, the AC's on max here for this team. And that fire, like their logo is this burning flame. For the first time, it's dwindling just a little bit, but the problem is because we're going onto Golden Camp on a control point where only one stage of this control gets played, you don't have a lot of confidence for AHQ winning this unless we're going back to Ilios Ruins.
The one thing I think we do have to say quite honestly here though, if we're looking at the grander context of this matchup and what it means, this is the hardest anyone has ever challenged Ardeont, and that includes Flashwolves who actually took a whole map off them, because in the ones that Flashwolves lost, they did not lose them as closely as AHQ have lost the maps they've lost here. And they may not even lose this map just by the way. If we talk about Ardeont needing to stay ahead of the pack because there's a huge target on the backs of them, this actually doesn't look like Ardeont really staying ahead of the pack anymore. They're just barely ahead, but they're not keeping the gap the same, right? The gap is absolutely narrowing, and you've got to imagine this team is one that is now at very real risk of being caught in playoffs, or potentially even before playoffs, even if they still pull out the win here. And it is going to be Oasis is going to be the decider.
And which one are we going to go to? Who knows just yet? It's going to be City Center, so no Sombra players from either team here, and it is going to be the Pharmacy coming out, and that's a little bit scary for AHQ because we've seen this kind of half work, but mostly not work, and it's very difficult to go back to this and kind of rely on it when your match life essentially now rests on this one composition. If it fails, it's all over. It's going to be an 0-3, and AHQ got to go home crying.
But if you win it, you do at least get to take it to Escort. You keep it alive for yourself. But it all comes down to this. You've got to get that point. There is no best of 3 here. It is just the one.
So far, you want to see Dizzy and the Pharmacy combo with Crappy as well really take the area control. So far, they have that. High ground is all theirs. This makes it much harder for AHQ to win the ground battle because it's not actually a ground battle when most of AHQ are on the high ground, but they are going aggressive.
They are. They go 1-for-1 with Jeff and Rapid, but Eric's getting very pressured. Dizzy needs to get a lot more done right now than he is. And Crappy is having to divert his attention to keep these other members alive. Yeah, the cap went over. And Ardeont are just going to do the exact same thing that worked for them on Well. Don't play the aerial game. You don't have to contest Dizzy. Play the ground grave. Take the safety out from underneath them.
I think that was a little bit too eager from AHQ. They didn't need to get that aggressive. I mean, it's kind of 50-50 because if you are going to get aggressive, that's great. But actually, they gave up the cap because of it, and they got pulled back to the cap. That really split up their team. They could have also just chosen to wait the game out. They have the high ground control. Ardeont don't have the ability to really take it off them, especially when you consider Dizzy and Crappy are in the air. And already, Ardeont's composition just doesn't really favor them trying to take that composition out. But now, because AHQ are behind in terms of cap, because they have to reset their entire team, you've got to attack with this Pharmacy. It's not as effective.
Saving grace as they were at least able to preserve his mech. He didn't have to suicide for that one. They need to convert these kills, trying to get Republic, but just can't quite close it out. They need to get aggressive to close out these kills, but that combines, and that has its own risks, rather. That's going to be the Rocket Barrage committed, but he's not got anything for it. Self-destruct doesn't quite pressure anyone out just yet, and Rapid does get the first kill through. Now AHQ looking to convert. They get Michelle before he's got self-destruct. They need to get a lot more than just that. Crappy going down, and he had the res is super unfortunate, but they've still got the legs in this fight if they need them. Republic has committed the Primal Rage. They've lasted that one out mostly. Crappy will be able to rejoin the fight, and Rapid is still getting kills. Yeah, very greedy, not getting anything for it. Pulls back and gets a little bit topped off, but he's going to lose his life. They squeeze more percentage points out, and that is definitely worth something, but AHQ should be able to get this cap over now.
And finally, they're able to res into player advantage, and you've got to thank finally Ardeont. You've got to back off here. You've got to feed more ultimates onto the AHQ side. You have to be concerned about AHQ snowballing again. The good news that if AHQ are going to win this, they're going to use every single ultimate, and AHQ now finally getting control of that cap, but giving away 98%. This is so dangerous for the team.
And it's that dangerous 98% as well, because a cap, if you're dead, means no guaranteed overtime. It just ticks straight up and then you're done. You have to stay in absolute control at this point now for the rest of the game, AHQ.
And if AHQ are going to win this, they're going to win it the old-fashioned way. They're going to win it the only way they know how, and that has to be momentum. That has to be snowball. They got to win every single fight from here, and if they lose a single one, they're completely out.
And they need to not even let the cap get snuck over like it is now. They cannot let there be a repeat of that opening skirmish where Ardeont successfully play the ground game. They need to get these kills. Here he gets the megs. They commit that rocket barrage, but they've only got the supports out. They still need to get the rest of the damage done. Michelle, no self-destruct on Crappy, no res. They've got Dizzy. And by the way, Ardeont got the cap in that. AHQ lead on members. Erica's going to commit that primal rage. He and Rapid are desperately working overtime to stay in this fight, and they will be able to commit some other ultimates. They get DM. They may just hold on to this one yet. Crappy can rejoin the fight. They've got the res. Ardeont have backed off. Oh, AHQ. That was dangerously close.
Oh, man. And just like Roadhog, take a breather right there. AHQ out. Crappy comes back now with that res that he needed, and you cannot allow him to go down like that again. And so far, Dizzy, 2 out of 2, does not get any kills with the rocket barrage. First time, Jeff just transcended. This time, I don't even know what happened. You couldn't even see him, but it just didn't work.
A lot of ultimates already committed, but that's the one from Erster, and that's what they need. Crappy, this is his opportunity to commit a res, but they do want to go into a numbers advantage. There it goes out, but Dizzy's in trouble, and they haven't converted kills yet. There they go getting Jeff. That's more what they need, but Crappy is in a lot of trouble. Good close out from Erster, finding that one, and they get Dizzy too, and Ardeont. It just looks like once again, they've got more gas in the tank, AHQ. They don't have ultimates to stall it out this time. The cap hasn't gone over just yet. They do at least take Erster to the grave with them, but who is going to be able to turn this one around to actually close it out?
Not enough members. Crappy even going to the soldier now, so this is just a final desperate contest from AHQ. At least, well, the cap hasn't gone over just yet, though, so until it does, now it's really bad.
That's such a late kill on Crappy as well. Who's here to contest this point? It's going to be Dizzy, but that's not the one you want. Rapid gets nothing with the pulse bomb. Dizzy's not got an ultimate. Eric's not got a primal rage. They've got to get onto this point, and they've got to get kills to boot. But who's here to do it? AHQ, they just don't have the members. They just don't have the ultimates. They've just got no gas left in the tank, but Ardeont, they always have more. They can always go that little bit further, and indeed they do on Golden Point. It is a 1-0 on the point. It is a 3-0 on the series, and Ardeont are still just barely ahead of the game.
Ardeont like that big monster truck right at the front of the pack there with that second reserve tank of field. This is where every other team goes wrong. Why don't you pack a reserve tank? Got to do what Ardeont do.
Yeah. Oh, it's 2 health bars, isn't it? This isn't even my final.
Ardeont are they're like a
final boss Ardeont,
and they got a second health bar that you didn't know about.
Exactly that. That is exactly what it feels like. You finally get them all the way there. You think you've really done it. You get them on Golden Point, right? And they're like, like, you know that like anime villain laugh, like, how is this possible? That's exactly what Ardeont are to everyone else in this tournament.
You know what?
And you know what? The protagonist still hasn't overcome them.
The thing is, it does feel like that because you got to go back to Hanamura here. When you consider that AHQ was so close to taking that one out, right in the last minute where they're like, yeah, we're going to cap this. It's just 1/3. We're on like 29%. We're on like even 32%. We're just so close there. And then, bam, the second health bar, like, what?
This isn't even my final form, you fool. And, well, final form earns Ardeont a 3-0 victory. Another one for themselves. Still no map losses, aside from the one to Flash Wolves from the first round robin. Those two teams are still going to meet later on this weekend. So, look, it's not all over yet for Ardeont. They can still definitely drop matches. They can still definitely drop individual maps within that as well if they still go undefeated in terms of match wins. But they are looking pretty secure in that first place seed. And you kind of mentioned this. It's not just about making playoffs for some of these teams. It's looking kind of unlikely now that AHQ make it. It is a bit out of their hands now. But even worse than that, for the other teams that are going to be able to make playoffs, there's actually this fight to avoid 4th. You don't want to be the team that has to come up against Ardeont in the semi. You want someone else to have to beat them for you.
I think the good thing is, if you're AHQ right now, you can be somewhat pleased about that game. You got to be disappointed because you didn't take the map you thought you were going to get. And I'm disappointed they didn't take it either. That's just got to be a shared mutual feeling right now. But for AHQ,
solidarity.
I'm also proud of, and they should be proud of the fact that they really push Ardeont extremely far. I would say even further than Flash Wolves did. I know Flash Wolves got an actual map win, and that's amazing because so far still the only team to do that. But the other maps that Flash Wolves lost didn't look as clean and didn't look as close as the maps that AHQ just lost. So now AHQ moving on and facing Hong Kong Attitude and Blank for the rest of the weekend. I actually think Hong Kong Attitude and Blank are going to be really concerned.
They do. They absolutely do. And that's the thing. Yeah, Flash Wolves got that one map win, but like you said, the rest didn't look very great. AHQ, like, out there is an alternate universe where they actually did win on Ilios and Hanamura both.
Yeah.
And that would have been the best performance anyone had had against Ardeont yet. Look, Kings Row was lackluster out of them on the whole. Ardeont were just out and out better than AHQ on that map, but on the other two, it was extremely close, and Ardeont were just barely coming out the top of the two. When you compare and contrast, like you said, to the Flash Wolves series, Flash Wolves looked way ahead on Nambani where they won, and then Ardeont looked way ahead on the other maps where they won. And you can't really call that even in the same sense. The unfortunate thing still for AHQ is, yeah, they do look very good now, coming up against Blank and Hong Kong Attitude both this weekend, but even with both of those wins being picked up, it is still hard for them to actually break into playoffs.
I wouldn't even say Flash Wolves looked ahead when they won Nambani. That was even super close. And the thing about Ardeont to consider, and this kind of stays true in this series against AHQ as well, which is the reason why AHQ didn't win, is Ardeont, even when they're losing, they're kind of still winning. They just still look like they don't
even
really look
even
like
when they're losing, they're winning.
The thing is, like, when teams lose, you know, they're really far down there. They're not coming back. How could they possibly come back from this? How could they possibly turn this around? You say the same thing about Ardeont, and then out of nowhere they come back and they turn it around. And we had moments on Nambani when you're like, there's no way they continue this fight, and then they do it. It's like,
yeah. It's kind of funny. It's like, this is going to sound really silly, but it's like, when they lose, it's because the other team beat them, not because they lost. If that makes any kind of sense. Like, they don't lose because they did something wrong. They don't lose
very
because
rarely anyway.
Yeah, extremely rarely. And even then, it'll be like a fight loss. It won't be a map loss. Even like within Control in its entirety, it won't be a single map loss. When they are losing out and out, it is on the rare occasion where other teams legitimately best them.
Let's get into replays now, and this is going to be the attack from Ardeont with 4 minutes remaining. So this is their first round of attack, and note that Dizzy has to be the one they look out for here. What you want to notice here is when Dizzy goes for the Riptide, now here's a play from, I believe it was a DM who took him down, so there should be a flank around. It was actually Jeff who took him down. So that's what the turning point though, because as soon as Dizzy goes down here, this is when it's very difficult for AHQ to hold on.
It really is, and look, from here, AHQ were just completely back-footed. There were a number of times as well, the turret would die right as Crappy committed a Molten Core, and he didn't really have time to get the turret set back up. You just kind of need to get into the thick of the fight. So actually, they did a really great job of dealing with the Molten Core defensive ultimate as well. Now, they didn't actually complete this cap until they had about 2 minutes remaining, so AHQ really stalled it out for a long time here with exactly this much percentage left. Ardeont were always going to get it over the line from this point. From here, it was all about stall from AHQ. It's almost impossible to stabilize, and they did a great job of stalling. They were actually getting a couple of kills in here as they were dying. They had the right kind of members to stall. They were always keeping a foot on the point, and it dropped below 3 minutes before Ardeont were actually able to capture. When you consider that this was on their first push, where they had a little over 4 minutes, that's actually a really big amount of time to take off the clock for a lost fight.
Now that's the thing, is AHQ in a losing position there, going into stall straight away, so they know what the game plan is. Got to just try and shave as much of that clock down as possible, and that's exactly what they were able to achieve. So despite just being so far behind, they're just able to sneak in this extra little bit of objective pressure and just kind of just sneak in that a small victory, if you will, for the AHQ side, which really helps them then on their own attack and then into the bank.
And that's the thing, right? 2 minutes 50 compared to, I think they had just over 4 minutes total. That's actually a really significant thing. And that's the thing. It was actually almost unfortunate that they couldn't close out that third. And a lot of that was actually time they lost on attacking the first point, which was kind of unusual. And it was very unfortunate. And they still came extremely close to capping that third, despite only having about a minute and a half to do it. Ardeont weren't able to do it in the near 2 minutes total they had. So actually AHQ just barely failing to get that over the line is still kind of them being ahead in a lot of senses. The fact that they got it way closer than what Ardeont did with way less time. The unfortunate thing is that they lost a lot of their time on that first point where they didn't on their initial attack.
But that's the thing, right? Because Ardeont is so great at adapting. Let's go into the next replay now and have a look at what happens in the final moments of, I think this is the time back attack that they actually lost for AHQ.
Unfortunately, it is. And you see how close it gets. They get way ahead at about this point, right? Then they start getting onto the point itself. And it's just a bunch of really smooth kills here. The commit from Ardeont is actually good. They're dealing with some members. Rapid going 1-for-1 here was significant. It takes the Transcendence off the table. And with that off the table, Erster doesn't have that same safety net anymore. Republic's in too deep. And this is just stall. There is a moment here where AHQ take a bit too long to get onto the point. They have to step off for a moment because of that self-destruct. And that ends up being all the difference. You look at the end of this, how close the point gets, and imagine if there had been members on the point when that self-destruct was out. It would have not been safe, but if that self-destruct hadn't been a factor, this would have been a third. So you've really got to credit Ardeont riding it so close to the line, and that's the difference as well between Ardeont and other teams on defense. Ardeont don't stall. They never abandon the win condition.
So here it is again, like right at the end there, the Animo sound barriers, I think that's the nail in the coffin really for Ardeont to complete that. Erster opens it up with a pick onto carries, really taking a lot of that kill pressure out, because when you lose the Zenyatta and you lose the Discord Orb, suddenly that takes a lot of kill pressure out on the other side. And so then with the sound barrier on top of that, you already have a lack of Discord, then the sound barrier as well. Suddenly Dizzy can't get the damage in.
It's too much.
Everyone died and Dizzy was left alone, and usually it would be a case of Dizzy's in an impenetrable position there, no one can challenge him. If Erster tries and goes for him, it's a 1v1 while the rest of his team kind of loses on the cap, and the cap is close to capping out. So they just didn't deal with Dizzy, but they killed everyone else, so eventually Dizzy just couldn't finish the game.
Yeah, and the thing that's smart about it as well, like I say, they just never abandoned win condition. Even at a numerical disadvantage, they still made a point to send Republic up to push Dizzy back. They knew that he couldn't win that fight. They knew that if he tried to go all in, he would die. So all they did was just send him up for long enough that Dizzy had to move back so that he couldn't have sightlines on the point. And it was in that window that Ardeont converted the few kills that allowed them to stabilize, which, by the way, they still did with a numerical disadvantage on the point itself. At that point, it was about 3 versus 5. So them getting those kills was also massive. But that's the thing, right? It meant that when they did get those kills, they were able to get something from it because they hadn't abandoned the win condition and they had forced Dizzy out. Player of the game, going to go over to DM. And I'll be honest, it would be really hard to pick player of the game in this one. I feel like you could just as easily give it to Michelle. You could just as easily give it to Republican places here. Really hard to say which of these players pulled more weight than any other, because on the whole, they were all really going off just that little bit more that allowed them to pull out the 3-0 in the end.
Everyone had shining moments, which is why it kind of makes it difficult. You look at King's Row, I think that's really Michelle's game, because his Zarya play was what opened up King's Row for them, was what really secured their defense in a lot of cases. So, and then DM is obviously having a lot of pressure throughout the entire game. He was just always good. Even with the McCree, you can remember on King's Row, even when he's going to die, he just takes out carries with him on his dying breath as a McCree. So, I mean, the guy is just getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, you could even credit Erster on the Genji for taking out the Pharah and Mercy very consistently. It's like everyone could theoretically be deserving.
All 6 of them.
Yeah, all of them. But you can only interview one of them, and that's what we're going to do now.
Right, it's going to be with Republic as well, the main tank.
大家好，我是 Ardeont 主坦克。
So hello everyone, I'm the main tank.
好，那我这边有几个问题想问啊，因为我想知道说，他们平常在休息的时候，他们平常都在做什么
？What do you guys do when you're not in matches or scrimming? What do you do in your spare time?
就是休假的时候都只在宿舍里面而已。
就在宿舍里面吗？
对，
真的假的？那因为之前我看他的访问当中，他有说就是他有去台湾的夜店，跟韩国有什么不一样
？So what's you sort of tell us some of the differences between here and Korea?
就是他没有去过韩国的夜店，所以不知道就是差异在哪里。
哦，所以第一次就来台湾的夜店。
처음인데 그냥 클럽 대만에서.
Oh, so I think they're talking about the nightlife here. He hasn't been to any of the nightclubs in Korea, so he doesn't know the difference between them there and Taiwan.
한국이랑 약간 클럽 가는데 약간 기분이 어떠세요? 재밌었어요?
好玩吗？
他说是很有趣，但是他觉得有点太吵了。
It feels like it's a little
他
noisy
觉
in
得
the
台湾
club.
女
So
生怎么样？
how do you find
the
females in Taiwan?
他好面容，感觉。
他说他觉得台湾女生好像普遍都很漂亮。
It feels like
代表台湾女生跟他说声谢谢。
Very pretty in the pictures.
好，潮男。
你好，我是那个潮男，我想问一下，就是你们队伍在团队合作这一部分表现得特别突出。那你们觉得你们在团队合作这一部分跟其他队伍的差异在哪里
So what do you think makes your team so much better? You know, considering practice and everything.
네, 팀워크에.
저희가
他说，因为他们的 tempo 就是比别的
Feels like
比别的
our
团
tempo is
比别的队
better
还要快
than
所以
other
觉得他们
teams.
就
We're
是
faster
都可
than
以
other
很安全
teams,
的过关。
and
那
it
我
feels
想
a
再
little
问一下，
safer.
就是你们是怎么做到
How
在
do
节
you
奏这
so
么
how
快
do
的
you
情况
so
下，
how do you
不
get
会
there?
让
What's
队员之
your
间
method
产
to
生混
achieving
乱
that?
시간 차이가 없는데 혹시 약간 팀원들이 어떻게 헷갈리지 않게 하셨는지 궁금합니다. 就是因为他们就是可能就是团练练习
something that we just practice a lot.
用团队量去达成这个效果。
对，就练习，常常练习。
All through just good practice.
那我想再问一下，就是因为我过去查你的资料，就是
when I
你没有参
did
加
some
过大
research,
型的赛事，
you haven't
你是从
participated
地区
anything
的
before.
小型赛事出来的。
You came up from
你是怎么
kind of
让自己
nowhere.
快速的能够从
How
一个
did you sort of improve so
一般的
quickly?
业
How
余
did you
选
move
手
from
然后直
a
接到大型的职业舞台
from a just a I guess a normal player into becoming a professional player at your level?
처음에 프로 준비를 할 때 좀 힘이 많이 들었는데 하다 보니까 좀 잘 맞는 것 같고 그래갖고 더 열심히 하게 됐습니다.
他说就是一开始其实很辛苦，但是
It's
就是后来
really
就是
hard
因
in
为
the start.
他觉得跟队员啊，就是要多多练习。
But it feels like
就是一直很常
you know
练习，
when I
然后现在
practice
就是
with my
觉
team,
得
the more I practice with my
其
team,
其实这样职业比赛好像还不错。
I got much better, and I feel like you know because everyone else worked hard, I wanted to work harder as well. How long did it take you to get this far?
약간 프로 게임까지 시간은 얼마나 걸렸냐고 좀 전에는 그냥 다른 경기 작은 일반 경기 했는데 연습 얼마나 했는지.
2달 정도 팀워크를 맞춘 것 같아요.
他说他们就是好像配合了两个月。
So about roughly
这么
2
快
months is how long I've been
好，
playing with the
他
team.
非常的厉害哦。那我们再次呢，恭喜 ART 赢得这一次的比赛。那下一
Alright,
场
so
比
there
赛
it
呢
is. A couple
是
words
贝的
from
对上
Republic as one of the, I guess, newer members of the team as well. When we first heard of Republic and the mighty AOD roster transferred over to Ardeont, this was this new Ardeont squad.
Yeah.
You hadn't heard of Republic before because he came out of nowhere, and in 2 months' time being with the team, he's become a star tank player.
You've heard of him now, to be sure. And, well, you've also heard of Ardeont as well, who, you know, aside from the roster existing in a previous incarnation of Mighty AOD, you also hadn't heard of before OPC Season 2, and now they sit with another 3-0 in the back pocket at the top of the tables, looking to have that first seed into semifinals, looking in great shape to make finals themselves. The target is still on their back. The teams are getting closer and closer and closer, but for now, Ardeont are still just barely ahead of the pack.
Yeah, and in arguably the most hard-fought 3-0 they've ever gotten as well, but Ardeont now sitting quite pretty. The next match coming up will be Blank Esports versus their old rivals in the OPC Flash Wars. It's going to be a repeat of the grand finals of OPC Season 1, but that's all going to happen very soon. For now, though, we're going to head to a break, so we'll see you after this.